Ready now? Okay. So welcome to our regular meeting of council, in person and live streamed electronically, Tuesday, June 6, 2023. We'll have the opening of our meeting with our land acknowledgement. The council and staff of the Township of Montague acknowledge that this sacred land on which the Township of Montague is now located and this meeting is being held is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We'll have our moment of silence, please, as we think of the people that are dealing with the fires throughout Canada, actually. Thank you. So moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll and seconded by Councillor Crabtree that the regular meeting of council agenda dated June 6, 2023 be approved as amended this date to move items 8A, 8G, 8J, 8M from information items to action items and to add the public meeting minutes from May 16th, 2023. All in favor? And that's carried. Oh, sorry. At this time, if you have any disclosure of interest or at any point in time through the meeting. So moved by Councillor Crabtree, seconded by Councillor Abbas, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council May 16th, 2023 be approved as presented. All in favor? That's carried. Any business arising from the minutes of our previous meeting? So our first is a delegation from our contracted planner, Forbes Simon, please. And welcome, versus just on screen.
Thank you.
Forbes, you want to hit the button on the mic?
It's live. Reeve, it's a pleasure to be with you and your council this evening. This is my first time with the new council, and congratulations to all of you. The matter I have before you tonight is a celebration. Or as much of a celebration as planning can ever bring to a community. You are the first community in Lanark County to have your official plan in compliance with the 2020 provincial policy statement. Congratulations. And it's not been without some effort. It was an accomplishment of the last council. You retained the services of JP2G Consulting and myself as their senior planner to undertake a review and update of your official plan in 2020. And as we all know, that was a challenging time to get anything done. But council was wonderful to work with. You went above and beyond in terms of reaching out to the community, providing them time to get comments. We worked very closely with your staff throughout this effort. And I think that we had a very successful project. It did take a little bit of time to get it approved at the Lanark County, but I am pleased to say that as of the end of March of this year, your official plan was in full force and effect. I've been working with your planner very closely over the last few months as she did all the hard work of consolidating the original document with the new text, as well as bringing in other amendments. There had been 3 other amendments that had been made to the plan over its first 10 years. And so Christy has provided the document that's with you this evening. It's not a necessary action for you to pass the bylaw this evening to acknowledge the document, but I think that it's a really strong move to make so that this is a document that can go on your website, that's acknowledged as being received by council and is the official consolidated document for your municipality. And it does have all the changes. It has all the new official plan mapping that we prepared for the community. And we've transferred the data, I believe, and the GIS should be updated either now or it is now updated on your system, that all the new mapping is now into your GIS and we're good to go. So I'm simply here to congratulate you and to thank you for the pleasure of working with you. It was a wonderful project, and I am very proud of the fact that this is the first in Lanark County. Others are going to follow, but yours is the first one, and well done.
I'll open it up to any comments. Jeff?
Yeah. Forbes, it was interesting being on the last council and diving into that official plan was a learning experience. And I know you and I had many conversations and some in-depth long ones too as well. And I was appreciative of that too as well as we learned. And I think we were able to nail down all of those questions, those burning questions that need to be done. So I'm pretty proud of what we got from it. That's a good document, and I'm sure we're going to see some things that we want to change as we go, but like always. But I think overall, I think it was a great experience, a great learning experience as well. I think we do have a very good document, and also kudos to Kirsten also that really stepped into that too as well, because I know there was some things with the county too as well back and forth, and that cleared up to make sure that it was the right one that what we had wanted. Yeah. So I think that was I think that's a kudos, and I think the people in the public should be also aware of that, of how well yourself and Kirsten were on that to make sure that everything was done appropriately and correctly. So anyways, I think that was a great learning experience, and I think we do have a great plan that's going to help us for the foreseeable future. So thank you for that.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else?
Reeve, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure working with you, and I look forward to that in the future. So, thank you. Have a good evening.
So moved by Councillor Bass and seconded by Councillor Kenny that council pass bylaw 3993 2023 to officially acknowledge the Montague official plan as updated and consolidated day May 2023, being the official plan in full force and effect for the Township of Montague. All in favor? And that's carried. So our first report of municipal officers is our junior planner, Kirsten Cote, please.
I'm not good with technology. Okay, so we had a public meeting on May the 16th to hear an application for a zoning bylaw amendment for a property on McConnell, the McConnell Leach zoning file ZB 23002. And the purpose of the application for rezoning was the fact that the property is located wholly within a bedrock designation. And this triggered the requirement for the applicant to obtain an aggregate impact assessment. The assessment that was prepared did include a recommendation that the severed lands be rezoned from rural to rural special exception to increase the rear and interior side yard setbacks to 30 meters, where they are normally 7.5 for the rear and 6 for the interior in the rural zone. And the reason for the increased setback is because the remainder of the property, it is rather large. It's approximately 92 acres in size. It does have extractive potential. And there aren't a lot of properties that are of a size that could support even minor aggregate activities due to the presence of water courses or already developed properties around it. So they're pretty special properties to have. So the retained lands does have the ability to perhaps support a small pit in future. And for that reason, the report writer for the aggregate impact assessment deemed it appropriate to increase that setback to 30 meters for the rear and interior side yard, just to give a little bit more of a buffer between the developable area on the severed lot from potential aggregate activities on the retained. And it should be noted that by increasing that buffer, the property proposed to be severed is about 2.28 hectares. It still gives more than enough developable area on the property to support a single-family dwelling. There were no comments of concern or objection to the zoning application. And the application meets with the intent of the PPS, the county's and the township's official plans and our zoning bylaw. And provided there's no opposition from council this evening, staff would recommend passage of the attached draft zoning amendment.
Any questions? So moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll, that council pass the necessary bylaw to permit zoning bylaw amendment ZB 23-002- McConnell Leach to rezone the lands legally described as Part Lot 9, Concession 2, Township of Montague, County of Lanark, known as the severed lands in consent application B22-144 from rural to rural special exemption. All in favor? And that's carried. Person. Moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll, seconded by Councillor Crabtree, that council approve the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of May 16th, 2023, and approve the recommendations contained within. All in favor? It's carried. Discussion?
Just a quick comment, I guess. I just want to make sure we clarify, because we do have something that's in our Committee of the Whole, the soccer field and everything else. And what we're approving is option 3, which is basically doing our own sort of stuff and everything else. It really doesn't have an effect of what that next discussion can be in the next kind of Committee of the Whole, correct?
Correct. So basically we're saying that we're gonna go ahead and get pricing to do a parking lot, the sliding hill, the walking trails, those type of things. We didn't nowhere in there is saying that we do not want to enter into an agreement with the school board, which
Yeah.
is our conversation.
Conversation
next.
after,
Yeah.
so that's perfect. So that's good. Perfect. Thank you.
So moved by Councillor Crabtree, seconded by Councillor Abbas, that council approve the minutes of the Montague Recreation and Culture Committee meeting of May 25th, 2023, and approve the recommendations contained within. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Abbas, seconded by Councillor Kenny, that council approve the minutes of the public meeting of May 16th, 2023, and approve the recommendations contained within. All in favor? That's carried. We have no petitions. Bylaws. Moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll, that bylaw 3992/2023, a bylaw to amend zoning bylaw number 3478-2015, ZB 23002 McConnell Leach, be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 6th day of June 2023. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll, seconded by Councillor Crabtree, that bylaw 3993-2023, a bylaw to adopt amendment number 4 to the official plan, be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed the 6th day of June 2023. All in favor? It's carried. Moved by Councillor Crabtree, seconded by Councillor Abbas, that bylaw 3993-2023, that bylaw 3994/2023, a bylaw to authorize the execution of a development agreement with Mitchell Robert Wallace, the owner of lands legally described as part of Lot 14, Concession 9, Township of Montague, County of Lanark, designated as Part 3 on 27R2500, be read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed, and sealed this 6th day of June 2023. All in favor? That's carried. So we have no notice of motion or motion, so our correspondence under action items is 8A.
I brought that one. I brought that one quickly forward. Actually, this is one that that I brought forward to the county, and I just wanted to kind of share with council a little bit too, as well as that a couple weeks ago was the sort of paramedic awareness week. And part of that too as well, right now there's a bill that's a private members bill called C-321 that is basically trying to change the laws against abuse against paramedics and nurses, so people that are working in that field. This came out of another municipality. I'm drawing the blank on which one it was, down here in Toronto, about talking about the amount of abuse that, and the amount of times that police need to be brought in to protect the paramedics as they're trying to do their job. And I was asking our person, Travis, who's the head of our paramedics in our small Lanark County. And over the last year, the police have been needed to assist the paramedics because of abuse 28 times. So I think that was kind of extreme. So I think it's one of those things where, once again, is to try to toughen up the laws against people that go after and abuse our paramedics and our nurses when they're trying to do their job. So this was a letter of support that then we approved of the county to support that bill, and hopefully something like that would get passed to give a little more teeth if people want to go after the people that are trying to save our lives. So anyway, I wanted to share that just as a positive thing that came out of the county. Hopefully we can see some tougher laws against that, not the current resolution, but just more information.
Okay. And 8G, council media release.
I just like bringing those up like I always do, just to make sure that everybody's aware of everything that's going on there. We do talk about how we did the push for the paramedics in there too as well, and the first responders overall. But another one too as well that people should be aware of, because we always talk about affordable housing and we talk about accessible housing. 7 and 7 project, once again, it's a huge project that the Warden's Caucus is trying to do to be able to have 7,000 new affordable houses, like it says that, and 21,000 attainable houses. Affordable and attainable are two different things. I mean, obviously, affordable is the subsidized stuff that the county helps with for people that in need, but also attainable housing is a new talk. If you haven't really heard about it, really is about housing is getting more expensive. It's trying to find ways to make it so it's just attainable for people to be able to get into it. So I think it's just there's a lot of things going on, and being up in the county and getting to see that kind of stuff that's really focused on trying to make sure that everybody has a home. And it's interesting when we talk to the county, like they really have a good pulse on where everybody is and who's actually homeless in the county and what the count is on the homelessness of the county. So I think it's interesting to know when people sometimes say what's going on. They actually have a lot of information, and what they're trying to do is quite remarkable. But as we all know, trying to solve that problem is a big issue as we're dealing with people. But it is interesting to know, and I think it's good for us as council members too as well to be aware of it. So when we're hearing that we know that there's stuff, and we can direct people to say, hey, we are trying to do things for that affordable housing. Just like we talked about a couple of weeks ago about the money that's also available for people that are severe low income, and they're something breaks in their house and they can't fix it. And there's opportunities for that too as well. So we want to make sure that we're aware of that as council to help support the community if we hear about people that are out there too as well. So.
And then Jay, Minister of the Township of Montague Senior Community Grant.
So this is cool. I mean, this is great for us, right? Yeah. So I mean, I think this is something we should recognize. We talked about this. So I mean, kudos to staff for filling out the and going after every grant possible, as that's sort of like a big council direction to make sure that we're trying to see whatever we can to get money to help to support the community. But so to get $19,850 for funding to do things for seniors in our township is massive. That's a big chunk of money for our small township. So I think, and I know staff are already working on different education sessions, a neat trip too as well. That I'll let Ali talk into a little more, because she did a fantastic job doing that too as well.
Thank you. So we did do this application in conjunction with our senior group in Montague as well, the Forget-Me-Nots. So it's a collaboration, and the Recreation Department is going to assist where they can as well. Not department, the Volunteer Recreation Committee will also assist where needed as well. But there's going to be some great things coming out for, and we're going to do up a community calendar to put out in the tax bill so that everybody gets it. We're looking at a Thousand Island boat cruise. We're looking at a fall color tour. We're looking at a holiday function. We're looking at 24 weeks of exercise or some kind of active living programs happening, information evenings. There's going to be all kinds of good things coming out of this. So we're pretty excited that we were successful to start that process here.
And the survey request for gravel roads.
It's me. Yeah, so I would just like to put forward that we consider putting a survey in the next tax bill, so that it's a survey to our residents, not just on our website, because anyone can respond to that. Just to sort of solicit input on the possibility of reducing the speed limits on all the gravel roads, in the township to 60 from the 80 that it currently is. I think that especially like, I'm not sure if you're aware of what happened on Rosedale just yesterday. There's certainly, I think we should definitely consider like what can be done to encourage people not to use our roads as sort of a rally track. And see what the residents think about that and how they feel about that.
What's the, I guess the accomplishment side of that is to try to see.
Just see if there is support for that, to reduce the speeds on the gravel roads to 60, and then if there is support from residents to do that, to move forward with looking at what we can do to reduce those speed limits.
Yeah, I think it's a neat idea. I think there's a lot, I mean, there'd be a big cost obviously to re-signing the whole township, because right now the reason why it's set like that too, as well as it helps with the signage side of it too as well.
Well, like signing, not re-signing, right? Because there's no signs.
Signing is re-signing, because
Yeah.
when it's unposted, it's a standard 80. So signing all of that, which, you know, and then maintaining those signs, and enforcement's another tricky one too as well, because as we know, we pay a certain amount for OBP. If we change that, will there be a cost back at all? And also looking at the data too as well, right? So like, when we look at data of how fast cars are actually going right now, I mean, we have lots of data that shows, like, I mean, we did one on Birch Road a couple of years ago where we thought it was fast, but the average speed limit ended up being about 56 kilometers an hour, so it was already under the 60. So I think a lot of it too as well is, but I mean,
Yeah, it's something to consider that though. It's, we talk about an average speed. An average speed is nice. It just takes one person speeding to kill someone, right? Like,
100%, yeah.
Like
And
it
even-
doesn't matter average or not. It just takes one person that's treating Rosedale Road like a racetrack that almost takes out a family. So
Yeah, and I don't disagree. It's tricky because it's hard to manage that side of it. But I mean, if maybe Ali's got something. Sorry, yeah.
So Chair, through you. So my recommendation would be for us to bring back a report with some information on what are the costs, instead of just saying it's going to be what would we be looking at for a council, just to better see that, and maybe with the questions that we would put on the survey to make sure that everybody knows what's getting put out if council directs us to do so, and that the public would also know what that means for tax increase. If you say yes, what this means, that kind of thing. So I think my recommendation would be, and I drafted a draft recommendation for council to consider, is us bring back some information, similar like we did with the chicken report. Let us bring back some information and then make a wholesome discussion and choice, maybe.
Not to go with Deputy Reeve Carroll, but it is really hard. I live on Ford Road, and it's a posted 60 zone, and they don't do 60. So like he said, without us investing a lot of money in policing it, people are gonna treat speed limits as like they do anything. Like Highway 15 is a posted 80, and people drive 120. So it's great in theory. It's going to keep the ones who are responsible and follow the speed limits, who are already following at 80. They're going to follow the new speed limit, but it's not going to prevent the ones that don't want to follow the legal limits and are going to do 120 in a 60 now.
Yeah.
The only difference is if there happens to be a police officer, which on Ford Road, I've been there 9 years, I've seen 2.
but it gives the residents the ability to then take the steps necessary to do something about those. Like that.
We've attempted it. It doesn't. It's very futile. So you end up calling the OPP. You give them the license plate number, and they say, if you see it again, let us know. So I'm not trying to discourage you. I think it's really great in principle, and we'll see what happens in the future. But like W. Carroll said, it's really hard. You keep the honest stay honest, and the ones that don't want to just do what they want anyways.
I was just gonna continue along that line, that some of the people that live out there, they live farther, I should say, in the township, they don't wanna drive 60 kilometers. If they're driving home, they wanna at least drive 70, 80 kilometers. From before me and homeless, we had that brought up. But it is a good idea.
Yeah, go
Yeah, so Chair, through you, we're happy to bring back some information on maybe what the average gravel road drive speed even is at this point in time that we have data on, kind of a costing. I just do want to make note that we do work with the OPP and the Police Service Board, and they, again, similar to anywhere, there's only so many cruisers and so many people, and you can't catch everybody, and they do a great job with what they're doing, and whenever we reach out to them with issues, like the Rosedale incident on the weekend, they respond like that. So I just want to make note that we have a good working relationship with the OPP, and they do a good job, and they do really work with us. But we're happy to bring back some information to have that discussion of, and maybe it's just good information to kind of just bring up and for council to see at this point, because we do have the 2 armadillos now, and you know, we're collecting data all the time. Our public works manager's consistently collecting data and doing a great job with that. So we have no issues bringing back some of that in a small report.
Yeah, I think you pretty well. I think the we're collecting data. Like if this conversation was 4 years ago, I think it would be a big time because we didn't have anything that was collecting the data that we're getting now. We're getting the data, which is really helpful, which is also will help with if we're seeing that there's extreme issues that we can have the data also to hone in on too as well. But I'm interested to see the report because I think it might spur a conversation of looking at different safety ideas that we can also look at. Because I'm always this has been a hot topic for me too as well. But how to like it's hard to. I like using this line, but it's hard to fix stupid sometimes, and in this case, it's hard to fix those people that are doing that. But like sometimes, if we maybe invest in the education side of it, but I think Ali's suggestion, if you're open for that too as well, because I know this is your idea, to bring back sort of an idea of costing and sort of some data to go with it, so we can have that wholesome conversation. I think.
So moved by Councillor Abbas and seconded by Councillor Kenny, that council direct staff to bring a report with an estimated potential cost if gravel road speeds were reduced from 80 kilometers an hour to 60 kilometers an hour, the average speed of gravel road users based on the information collected with the speed spies, and the potential call for service increase costs prior to a survey being released. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So moved by Councillor Kenny and seconded by Deputy Reeve. Are we going to recess to go?
We'll recess and we'll go in after.
What, we're gonna go into committee?
Yeah.
Yeah, so before I recess, ask for questions. Sure. Sorry, that's what I needed to clarify. Any questions from our audience this evening? No? Any online? No. Okay. So moved by Councillor Kenny, seconded by Deputy Reeve Carroll, that council recess at 6:28 p.m. All in favor? That's carried.
Welcome back, folks. So we're gonna go into our committee of the whole meeting. So the opening of the meeting starts with the land acknowledgement. The council and staff of the Township of Montague acknowledge that the sacred land on which the Township of Montague is now located, and this meeting being held is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Ushabi Nation. So for the adoption of the agenda, so moved by Councillor Bass and seconded by Councillor Crabtree, that the committee of the whole agenda dated June 6, 2023 be approved as presented. All in favor? Carried. So the first thing on the docket is going to be the Greer site plan agreement, and I believe Kirsten's got some wise words for us.
Okay, so this one predates several of us. So I'll give a little bit of background on this file. So back in 2010, the owners of 440 Sturgis Road, the Greers, entered into a site plan agreement with the township to permit development of that property with a self-storage facility. Now, this property is approximately 42 acres in size, is bounded by the OVRT, the Ottawa Valley Recreational Trail, and Highway 15. And the property is accessed by Sturgis Road. At the time that agreement was entered into in 2010, the property was zoned General Industrial Special Exception 2. And in 2018, the owners of that property applied for an amendment to allow for some additional permitted uses. And council did pass a bylaw approving the majority of those requested uses. There was a request for a waste transfer facility on that property, but that use was not approved and was not included in the zoning amendment. So in 2020, it was brought to the attention of staff that there was some development that was being undertaken on that property that was not approved pursuant to that 2010 site plan agreement. And so the owners of the property were given two options. The first was to remove anything that was completed and not approved in the 2010 agreement, or to apply for a site plan amendment. So they opted to apply for a site plan amendment. And the purpose of that was to provide for some additional storage structures on the property, and as well as an open storage area, which would be located between the storage structures and the property at 12181 Highway 511, which is the Crown Rust Control enterprise, and there's also a dwelling on that property. So some reports were brought to the committee in October and December of 2020 with respect to the site plan, and council did have some concerns, and those concerns that were raised related to what activities were being proposed in that open storage area, and how would the lighting of that open storage area impact the resident at 12181 Highway 511. There were also some concerns about source water protection, because there's a pump house on the property and the property is adjacent to the OVRT, and also concerns about the impact of the development as it relates to source water protection. And the final item was how are site plan agreements enforced? So brings us to now. Since 2020, there have been some significant changes related to site plan control. So back in 2020, council had the authority to approve or refuse site plan applications, and that authority has been removed from council's purview. And authority for the approval of site plans has now been delegated to the planner and clerk administrator. It doesn't matter how complex the site plan application is, council no longer has the ability to approve or refuse. While council doesn't have the ability to approve or refuse, staff thought it was really important that we sort of close the loop on this conversation. It has been ongoing. So I wanted to just provide a little bit of information that I've been able to gather to date. The open storage area, there was question about what that was going to be used for, and the agent for the applicant has advised that it would be used for the storage of boats and trailers. The lighting in the open storage area will be addressed in the site plan agreement. We want to ensure that the resident at 12181 Highway 511 isn't negatively impacted by any like flood lighting or light pollution, so that they're not able to enjoy their property as it is intended. Staff has also reached out to RVCA with respect to source water protection concerns. They have advised that the activities that are proposed currently don't cause them any concern. If other uses were contemplated, such as a heavy equipment sales or rental establishment, that could have a negative impact on source water, and they might have concerns, and that those can be addressed in a risk management plan with RVCA. With respect to enforcement, there are provisions within a site plan agreement to deal with this. There are timelines that are set out for how long development has to be completed within. There is also the ability of the township to step in and complete work that is not completed pursuant to the agreement or is completed dissatisfactorily, and the cost of that work can be recovered either through civil action or adding those costs to the tax account of the owner. And there's also the opportunity to obtain a performance guarantee, so that would be like a letter of security that would be for the value of the site works that have to be completed, and then once those works have been completed, then that security would be released. So the staff are going to work with the applicant. We're going to get this new site plan agreement up to snuff, and we'll ensure that that agreement is brought to council, not to approve or refuse, but to authorize its execution by bylaw. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thanks, Kirsten. Just as a point of clarification, it's Highway 15.
What did I say?
Highway 511, which is-
Did I really? Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're kind of far from 511, aren't we?
We got
Thank
ones-
you very
we got
much,
ones and-
though.
We got ones and fives in there, it's all good. So it's,
Well, and
yeah, yeah.
I thought the 12181 thing was going to catch me, but I must have been thinking of Lanark. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. I think that, thanks Kirsten for that. I think it's one that's been going on for a little bit, and I
Yeah.
have a lot of trust in the, obviously the staff to
Except for the number thing.
Except for the number thing, so we'll let that one slide. So
Thanks.
anyways, I'll bring it over to Jim here, because
No, just one question. I think it's excellent, everything that's done. My question was, when you said trailers, are you referring to like a boat trailer, a small house trailer, not transport trailers? like-
No,
Okay,
no,
That, I was just interested.
No.
Okay,
no.
that's all I need.
any other questions at all?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Sorry
perfect.
about
Yeah,
that number.
yeah, yeah, pretty simple and easy, yeah. So I got moved by Councilor Crabtree and seconded by Reeve Jennings that council received the Greer site plan report as information. All in favor? Is that it for you today, Kirsten? Thank you. I know, it's a big one for you.
Sit back and watch everyone else.
Sweat.
That's good. We want to watch Steve sweat now, so that's good. So that's good. So next up is actually kind of a good thing. It's recycling and hopefully getting money back in our pockets. So take it away, Steve.
Thank you, Deputy Reeve, Carol. So the report before you is just for information on our promotion and education agreement with CMO, Circular Materials Ontario. As council is aware, we are transitioning come July 1st to producer responsibility. So those that don't know what that means is obviously tax savings. It is not funded by municipal taxation anymore. It will be responsibility of the producers who will be doing this. Minimal change for townships of Montague, as we were informed that our service provider will remain the same, so it will be Amterra. Everything is literally going to stay the exact same, so we're just going to save in the funding costs. Just want to provide an update on the agreement that we have. So we got notification that they were going to provide us 35 cents per household to continue the existing promotion education we're doing, mailing out stuff in our tax, when we mail taxes and stuff like that. That's kind of what they said they were originally going to do. Staff talked with some counterparts, and we all kind of agreed that, you know, it seems a little light as recycling is a large component of our handouts when we do this, and moving forward with promotion and changes that will come. So after some negotiation, they came back with 44 cents per household, which isn't a whole lot more, but it does add up to at least cover 50% of our mailing costs, which I think is pretty sufficient. As the other 50 will be with garbage. So, I mean, that's still on our responsibility. And that'll cover kind of the waste guides and calendars. And that pricing is based on 1,662 households that we currently have, and that'll continue to move forward. Other municipalities have widgets or waste apps. That's where a lot of conversation is coming right now for them. It's a lot of back and forth where we're lucky we're literally just on the mailouts right now. So staff was pretty pleased with the offer that they came back with, and we're at least getting 50% back, and our residents are going to see the same consistent service that they have now. So that's just a little update on promotion and education for recycling.
Very exciting. Thanks, Steve. The widgets, and I'm a little confused with that, like the widgets and the apps, is that, what's the purpose of that? Is that, like, we're not doing that? But
Yeah, so that's nothing to do with us, just like other municipalities that's still where they're going back and forth, just on the funding allocation for that. Nothing to do with Montague. That's just kind of where other people are still holding up on their agreement. Is the town of Carleton Place, for instance, they have waste app in conjunction with recycling app combined.
So what does that app do?
It's everything to do with their waste and recycling. I'm not too familiar with it by any means, but I think it's basically you can get all your recycling information, your garbage information, everything's on the app, and it's service provider and the township who kind of monitor that, and any updates come through it. And our fantastic Reeve may be able to elaborate a little more than I can on that.
No, it's not her department,
Not the
sorry.
department.
But it is hugely taken by the residents of Carleton Place for sure. They're huge on everything for what's on their phones. Like,
And they utilize the
They
app too
use,
as well,
yeah.
right? So it might be something that down the road for us, I guess, but we're not maybe there. We're still a mail out better for that, but as we go, we might be transitioning into something like that too as well. I guess, I mean, everybody might be, as mailing out might become less and less so, but.
For sure.
Okay, thanks, Steve. That's a good update, and
Thank you, council.
I have no questions obviously for Steve, sorry, I should
No,
ask that.
no,
Yeah, sorry.
straightforward.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Garbage
So,
is garbage.
what's that?
Garbage is garbage.
This
It's
is-
recycling. It's recycling.
That's great. So moved by Reeve Jennings and seconded by Councillor Kenny. The council received the recycling transition supporting P&E contract for information. All in favor? That's carried. Allison has jumped up there because the next thing that we're going to talk about is the compensation and pay review that council's had for a good long time to review and go over. So we appreciate staff giving us the extra time to as well to make sure that we had extra questions and everything else. So this will be the presentation now by Ali for that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I think council's had it for about a month, maybe. And it's been out in the public. It went on the last agenda, was deferred until this evening. So the township in 2023 budgeted for a compensation and pay equity review. We budgeted $10,000 to have a third-party consultant complete the project. Other townships who have recently went to RFP are getting services in the amount of $20,000 to $30,000 to complete the project, and about 6 to 8 months time for review and be presented to council. Council requested that the clerk administrator and the acting treasurer complete the task as opposed to a consultant based on the CA's background to save some funds for the township. So that's why we're here this evening. So as a background, public sector employers, the township is required to show evidence that we can achieve pay equity. The last pay equity and labor market review was 7 years ago. And it included employee demographics, economic growth, expansion within the municipality, as well as legislative changes. So again, this evening, we've included all of those items in our review. In 2018, the province introduced Fair Workplaces, Better Jobs Act that impacted minimum wage and pay for part-time positions, as well as vacation time and things like that. So we've had no municipal growth. There has been municipal growth, increased competition for talent, and disruption in the labor markets since the COVID-19 pandemic has really escalated in Lanark County, Renfrew County, really all surrounding areas. So we completed a compensation review, not just for staff, but also for members of council to ensure an fair and equitable pay for everyone in the municipality. What is pay equity? Pay equity is equal pay for work of equal or comparable value. It requires comparing jobs typically done by women with different jobs typically done by men. And again, this is legislated for us to complete. So during the review, we also evaluated all of the jobs and we'll update job descriptions accordingly. With our job evaluation, we have 14 factors. They're listed here that provide for scoring for each job based on the education that's required, the experience, your communication skills, your physical effort, your supervision leadership, financial responsibility, all those great things listed. Now, we also, so then the jobs were listed into groups in descending order based on how they scored on the previous 14 scoring items. So we have draft to present to council, 8 groups, 6 steps that contain an 18% spread between step 1 and step 6, so a 3% change, and merit is being proposed for anyone at step 6. This is an example of a pay grid. Our current pay grid looks nothing like this. It's just a max and a min, and everyone's kind of there in between. So you'll see here, up in the top, how you have your step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. So an employee would move a step if at the end of the year they had a successful performance appraisal, met the goals and objectives that were set out for them to complete that year, and then they would move a step. The grouping down the left-hand side is your score. So the clerk administrator scores in between 800 and 899. So that position is group 1. And so far it goes down. So the public works manager and treasurer score both in between 700 and 799. So they're in the group 2 range, and it goes down the grouping. On the right-hand side, you will see a merit, which is basically whenever an employee is at step 6, that they still have the ability, strictly by council approval, no matter what position it is, to be approved for, they can't get a step increase technically because they're at the top of the grid, that council could approve a 25 or 50, 75 or 100% one-time payment of merit if they meet the goals and objectives set out. This kind of will keep us from falling so far behind as what's happened in the last 7 years. We've really fallen behind. These types of market reviews should also be collectively done every 2 to 3 years to make sure that we're staying competitive and it's not a big impact on taxpayers whenever these type of things have to change. So again, 3% increase per step, only for those at step 6 and only approved by council. So the market evaluation, we took a number of municipalities to evaluate ourselves against, and I will explain and show data as to why we chose them. So we chose in Renfrew County, Township of Horton. They're of a similar size to us, similar population, kind of similar demographics. Merrickville, Wolford being next door neighbors, Admaston, Brumley in Renfrew County, Greater Madawaska in Renfrew County, McNabb Braeside in Renfrew County, Drummond North Elmsley in Lanark County, and Township of Tay Valley here in Lanark County as well. So the intended outcome of the review is fairness, compliance, competitiveness, and affordability. So we have to provide pay equity compliant pay grids. That was number 1 goal. Provide a competitive pay grid to comparators to retain staff and be able to recruit staff. We're not looking at being at the top of the grid. Some of our positions, even with the change, won't even be in the middle of our comparators. We won't even be at that 50%, but we want to at least be able to be somewhat competitive. Provide fair wage to employees, council, and local boards, and bring a reasonable grid in comparison to township budget and percent of own tax purposes towards wages. So taking into account the ratepayers as well and what kind of impact that would have on the municipality. So how did we get to the outcome that's going to be presented this evening? We received pay grids for 2023 from municipalities, employee and council members. We received their benefit information, so dental, all those type of things. Everyone has OMERS. Employees, everyone have reviewed and marked up their job descriptions based on the actual work completed to be scored. compiled, reviewed, and scored the data and calculated the cost to the township for 3 options to be discussed this evening. How did we compare? Overall, the township mostly pays below the 50th percentile of our comparators, with such positions of the clerk administrator, treasurer, and public works manager all being the lowest paid. And then the clerk administrator position was 17.3% below the median, or about 18,000 a year. The treasurer position was 14.6 below the median, which was 13,000. Again, right now, that's one position for us. We've made that one as opposed to having 2. The public works manager is about 10.2% below, or 9,800. Our other positions, the chief building official, the deputy clerk position that will be being filled shortly, finance clerk, admin, lead hand, equipment operators, we're in line with median or slightly above. Our fire chief water operator is not comparable to anyone else because there's no one else that's a water operator and a fire chief that we could find. So he is the unicorn of Montague. Management positions all receive, our comparators, they all receive straight time for overtime, with most of them maxing out at 2 weeks. So Montague does only provide 2 weeks of OT at straight time to the administrator. All other hours are volunteer. Remaining management are not currently limited. So non-management positions have the ability to bank up to 80 hours, and all hours after that are paid out. Greater Madawaska only allows a total of 3 weeks to be paid out, and the remaining must be used as time off. This was implemented based on some severe winters, that it was having a substantial impact on the budget, and it's hard to budget for. We do have reserves set up in Montague proactively to accommodate years where we have really bad years and things like that, and years that we don't, we can set more into that reserve. Council roles of the Reeve, Deputy Reeve, and councillors were also below the median. Local boards, so our livestock evaluators, they were found to be actually compensated fairly well, and other municipalities are actually starting to increase theirs to reflect ours because it's getting difficult to either get people on, or they want to work for the municipalities that are compensating better than others. OMERS, LTD, life insurance, dental and health, medical, short-term disability, we were comparable to other municipalities in Lanark County and Renfrew County. There was some discrepancies in the ability to carry over some sick time, not have sick time paid out, but be able to carry forward, especially with the pandemic. I think that became more of an item that people were taking. They had to take time off, those type of things. So some municipalities required their employees to pay a portion of the benefits. So Horton required 100% of LTD, which would be about $125 per pay in Montague. Greater Madawaska was 25% of dental and health, which would equal about $74 a month off of a paycheck here in Montague. Mississippi Mills, they were 50% of LTD. Tay Valley actually provides a lump sum amount available per year to their employees as opposed to offering the insurance. So I think that maybe for, if you have a really young workforce, that might be beneficial, but that's what they chose to go with. So for municipalities providing footwear and uniform, it was kind of all over the map here. We do provide $1,000 per year for Public Works for their boots and their safety gear and all those things. So we were competitive, actually probably the best as far as that goes. Which means that our crew is always set up, making sure that they're safe. Majority of municipalities only provide a cell phone allowance, $25 per month for management, such as the CAO, fire chief, and public works manager. Montague does provide a cell phone to the public works manager and the fire chief, and $21.91 per pay to public works operators for cell phone use, because as we move that way, we do require them to use their phones, take photos, send us information, all those types of things. Most municipalities pay 1 to 3 floating holidays on top of stat holidays. Montague, we don't pay any currently. Some municipalities make the OMERS program mandatory for council members and also provide council with a health and dental program. We do not. Variation on the council per diem and food allowance for breakfast, lunch, and supper. We were competitive, but how people administer them were all different, and we are proposing a change to ours to ease the administration side of things, similar to what some others have done, and has worked out well for them. So the conclusion is that I'll present some of the stats and comparators and all those types of things. But the conclusion was that we are substantially behind, but again, it's been 7 years. So that's anticipated, especially with the change in the economy since the pandemic. Do we want to ask questions now or keep going through?
Let's finish
'Kay.
your presentation, and then we'll go to the question.
'Kay.
Okay with council? Okay.
So I'm going to skip through this, basically all the meat of the review I just gave you. So here's some of our competitors. So our household count comparisons, you'll see that we kind of fall in the middle as far as the comparators that we use. We're kind of in that middle range for household counts, and population, we're also, I think we're 5th, but kind of in that middle range to our comparators. We have some above, some below. Tax zone purposes, so this is the levy, or these are the amount of funds that we collect from our ratepayers to operate the municipality. Again, you'll see we're somewhere in the middle for the funds that we receive to operate the municipality. Assessment, so the total assessment that the municipality has to apply the tax rate to receive levy, we are almost at the bottom. So that's where you'll see a big discrepancy with Drummond, North Elmsley, and locations like that. And this is why we really chose Horton, to be honest, in Renfrew County, because they were more similar to us in a lot of aspects. Land size, so again, the square kilometer of, we're about 280 square kilometers in size. So we kind of fall in the middle of all the municipalities again, with Greater Madawaska being the huge outlier of over 1,000 square kilometers in size. This is total wages and benefits in comparison to other municipalities. So you will see Montague is relatively low in comparison to others of similar size, or that were actually larger than. We also compared wages as a percentage of our own purpose taxation. So what was the percentage of wages in the whole of the levy that we collect? And you will see that Montague is the lowest with about 29.83. And all other municipalities, there's a few in the 30s, the rest are 40, up to 48% of the total wages that they pay in relation to the amount of taxes that they actually receive, which is quite substantial, to be honest. Appendix B. So we did all the comparisons, all of the data is here. I'm not going to go through each individual one. So basically we provided to council the hourly high rates, the hourly low rates for each position that we have compared to other municipalities. They're not all like for like. The CAO clerk or our clerk administrator position, a lot of these have a full-time CAO, a full-time treasurer, a full-time clerk, where we don't. So this wage is just for CAO in a lot of locations, where ours is for all three. In relation to that. So treasurer, you'll see we're at the bottom. Public Works manager, again, we're at the bottom for pay. Fire chief, again, he's an anomaly. No one else is a water operator with him. So his job is scored for this. We actually scored, previously it's been scored 50-50. We had discussions and we're going to have a better idea for the 2024 budget, but based on this scoring, we did 60-40. That water's really probably only 40% of the time. Fire would be 60, especially with increasing legislation in fire. So for 2024, that may even adjust a little bit again, but for this, it was 60-40, not so much the 50-50. So we will see some changes in budget. Our CBO, again, was lower, but there's 4 or 5 municipalities that are only about 9 cents difference or 19 cents difference from each other. So we're still competitive. Deputy clerk, this is a new position that was scored. And so it's relatively, it is competitive. Junior planner, again, there's not many that have junior planners. They have planners and you'll see the wages there. Greater Madawaska was the only one that had a junior planner, but also have a planner. So we compared the junior planner to the planner and adjusted, or to the other junior planners and adjusted accordingly. Finance clerk, competitive. Our admin assistant, again, was competitive compared to others. The lead hand, we were absolutely competitive in relation to others on the high end. Our equipment operators, again, this is kind of that middle ground, but it seems that there's a lot of discussion about getting equipment operators, and other municipalities are reviewing wages, and a number of the other municipalities have unions that are up for negotiations, so it could change. So keep that in mind. The reeve or mayor position, you will see, again, that we're one of, this is really hard to read, but we're one of the lower paid compared to others. We did, whenever the presentation as far as the recommendation to council on where their wages should be, we took out the highs and the lows and kind of found that middle ground, because some municipalities, like Carleton Place, is not really a comparator. For the deputy reeve, again, we pulled in some other municipalities because not everyone has a deputy mayor or a deputy reeve, and did the same thing, kind of took out the high and low and found a middle ground. Counselors, again, there's variations because of, it seemed like if they didn't have a deputy, some of the counselors made additional money because of the lack of the deputy, and they took turns being the deputy. So again, highs and lows out with a middle ground. So we do have several options presented. Option one, which again would be recommended, is average of comparators, with group 1 and group 2 being below the 50th percentile. So our clerk administrator, public works, treasurer positions with the clerk administrator, so that those two groups would still be below the 50th percentile, but everyone else is greater than or better, to ensure that we're competitive in those positions, and still realistic on wages for group 1 and group 2, and a lesser impact to the community. Again, these show where we would be, where you'll see the CAO clerk is still near the bottom. The bottom one is Montague, so we'd still be relatively low, and so forth for each position. Option 2 would be 50th percentile or greater. So this would mean that all of the positions, all of the groups would be at 50th or greater. This is not what's being recommended this evening. The only ones that would see a big impact would be your group 1, group 2. We're not recommending that option this evening. Option 3 is average of the top 4 comparators and go with that, which would have an even larger impact. Again, we're not recommending that this evening, so unless council wants me to go through it in detail, I'm not going to, just for a reference. Our proposed org chart, again, this is very difficult to see. I don't even know if we have our clerk administrator, treasurer, reception admin, our janitorial custodian. We have some part-time people for Rosedale and for the office, the finance clerk, the public works manager, junior planner, fire chief, water operator, chief building official part-time, 3 days a week, and our deputy clerk. So our bylaw enforcement animal control contract would, the deputy clerk would look after that, as opposed to right now, it's me that's dealing with them as well. And fire chief would have the deputy, the captains, the volunteers, and any water operator in training, which we do have one public works employee who's also taking that. The junior planner would have our septic inspector, who's a contract that relates to them. Public works is the lead hand, the equipment operators, and our casual operators that actually worked out really well this past winter. So to keep that function from happening moving forward. The financial impact, so the impact on option 1 would be as follows. So implementation of July 1 this year to December 31st to ensure a competitive market as other positions are coming up in lots of municipalities around us, would be about $48,000. We did have a savings last year of $127,000 from staff completing multiple roles and being short-staffed. Council approved that going into reserve to offset future costs for some staffing wages. So we have that there to offset the $48,000 this year. Next year, it would be a total of $97,000 with everyone, and it would be funded from taxation, from the partial wages reserve, and budgeted savings that we know we're going to have in 2024 already. And that's inclusive, that $97,000, and then the $50,000 for the cost of living adjustment that happens each year normally, and any performance appraisal adjustments. So that is something that would happen no matter what. So we're looking at about, based on the change just for the compensation review, about 1.5% over 2 years to make up the change for the adjustment in the compensation review. The COLA and performance appraisal adjustments happen each year. So that's not a cost related to this, but I still wanted to show council how everything would be funded. So it's not a surprise for 2024 or 2025 budget. And that would still leave us with about 61,000 in the reserve from the staffing, from the savings in wages from 2022. So you could technically stretch it out even over 3 years to accommodate and use some more of that reserve as well, or keep that for future succession planning of staff. Option 2, it's broke out similar, it's slightly less based on the changes and results in a little higher reserve balance. Option 2 was without council having remuneration change, so staff changes without council. I don't recommend this. We're gonna fall behind, and then there's gonna have to be an adjustment, and this happened in other municipalities, and then it's a big change, and it's really council remuneration should continue to go up the same as staff. It really is, there's a lot of work to sit on council. The third option was change the grid, but do not provide competitive pay to employees. So change the grid, we're gonna have some changes just because the clerk administrator grid, for example, the top end right now wouldn't even be step 1 base pay in the new grid. So you'd have to have a small change. So basically this would just offset any small changes to staff that would have to move because our grid currently wouldn't even pay them enough. But that's it, not provide anything further. So that's what this would be. And it would be obviously substantially less, but could cost more in the long run, depending on if employees get headhunted from other municipalities, which happens a lot. In with this as well, we've included draft expense policy with a markup for council. And this is where we were discussing the per diem. So it was $100 per day per diem for council members who go away to conferences and things like that because they have to take time off of their full-time jobs normally to attend. And then you'd be allotted $15 for breakfast, $25 for lunch, $35 for dinner. Most municipalities are just saying, okay, you get $175 for the day, and that's your per diem, as opposed to specifying, because some people maybe don't eat breakfast, and other people like a bigger dinner and things like that. Again, just a recommendation to council for easier administration, and it's the same amount of money. It has no impact on the budget, just more what others are going towards. As far as staff, we would still have our set out amount and have to provide that if we go anywhere. The personnel policy would have a number of changes as well. Included in here based off of the comparators as well. A lot of them have condensed work weeks and or flex policies that have been put in place. So it would be a condensed work week in the sense that you would work your 70 hours in 9 days as opposed to 10. So you're still working the same number of hours, but you'd be off 1 day every 2 weeks. So some municipalities have gone that route. Some have gone with having the flexibility of working from home. We're too small to allow people to work from home on a regular basis. We need to be in the office, is my personal opinion. So what's in this would be more so the condensed work week with a flex policy potentially to come back to council for discussion at a later time as a separate policy altogether, if council's interested in that. The COLA adjustments, so it would be based off of council approval each year with budget as opposed to the strict CPI. Like CPI was 6.8 last year, I believe. So this would be more set that, okay, county's approving to, we would bring comparators and have that discussion at budget. Some are just small admin things. Performance appraisal would be a step of 3%. Previously, it was an increase of potentially 4%. This would be a step of 3%, and then whatever your COLA adjustment was. Including a one float holiday, as opposed to some municipalities have included Truth and Reconciliation Day as a statutory holiday. We do have Remembrance Day as well. The recommendation from staff would just be to put a float as opposed to continue to list, and then if other dates come up, that we have that one float to offset some of those days for the stat holidays. Vacation, this is just adjusting. So we've had this discussion with council before that start with 3 weeks of vacation for full-time employees, and then the change for the part-time, or remove the 3 years because they'd be starting with 3, and they would have 3 until 8 years of service. Some of these changes, so the domestic or sexual violence leave, again, it's included, it's employment standards. We made sure to put that in there, that people are aware that they have that. Again, the pandemic unfortunately has brought a lot of this out and escalated those type of things. Sick leave, that a full-time employee may carry forward 1 year worth of entitlements, which we have 10 days. So at most you could have 20 days banked. They will not be paid out. If you leave, they don't get paid out. It's just that they have the ability to carry them forward as opposed to a use them or lose them type of scenario that's there right now. The pension, again, we just put in that effective 2023, we have to offer OMERS. Again, it's just a legislative thing. Public Works, clothing and personal protective equipment, we already provide $1,000 to each of the full-time employees, so we wanted to include it in the policy, and that part-time or casual receive $250 per year to ensure that they also have the appropriate safety clothing and or work boots on an annual basis. Short-term leave, again, as per employment standards, has changed, so we've adjusted that accordingly. And those were the main changes for the personnel policy. Council remuneration, this is where we have recommended the change. So the reeve change would be from $21,850 to $25,500 for an annual remuneration. Deputy reeve would be from $16,635 to $18,480, and councillors would be from $13,915 to $15,800. And our board members would stay what they were. We did just review them and increase them last year, so they are competitive in that aspect, so they would stay to what they are now. So that is it for, I went through that really quick, but again, we've had it for a few weeks. Any questions?
Thanks, Ellie. That was that was quick, but it was good in depth. I think council's had a great opportunity to read it and everything else. Before I open up the council, I mean, a couple big ones out of the gates, just to make sure is, I guess, for everybody watching, because wages are always a tricky subject for anybody, especially in the public sector. I mean, one thing that jumps out for me is the wages, the percentage of the taxation. And that's kind of like basically in the private sector controlling your labor budget. And when you're controlling your labor budget, at the lower end, the way that right now is showing, I mean, I realize that percentage will change a little bit with some of our changes, but I mean, that's a good positive that people should see that the labor budget is managed, lower in the township. Some of that is because of wages. We need to maybe adjust those to make sure that we're competitively paid, because we don't want to lose our good people. We all admit that we have good people. Another part of it too, as well, is we don't have positions that are unneeded too, as well, I think, which is an important thing. And I'm not saying that other municipalities might have positions that are unneeded, but we definitely are making sure that we are running it as lean as we can while offering the best services too, as well, and keeping quality staff. So just a couple points I want to bring out about that. And on that note, I will open it up to council. Jim, would you like to go first? Yeah.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. When you were talking about the merit, you said that was only in the 6th step? So when they get to the 6th step, that's where it ends, and then if you wanted to, council at the time wanted to increase it, they would have the say in increasing. Does this whole process then start all over again?
No. So if your steps, I'm just gonna use my position for an example, just because it's me. So if I'm the clerk administrator, let me just pull up so I'm the clerk administrator up here. I'm just gonna go show. And I'm at step 6. Council gives me goals and objectives for the 2023 year, and I've met them, exceeded them, got millions in grant money, whatever the case is. Council can then say, during my performance appraisal, council could say, you know what, she did an excellent job. We can't move her a step because there's no additional steps. We're going to give her a one-time payment of 50% of that merit to show that if we had another step to move you, we would. And it's more so to give that incentive so that staff don't become complacent at step 6 either. So that they're always excelling or trying to excel at their positions.
Another question here. Excuse me, you said you had we have 10 days they have sick time a year?
Yes.
Okay. So why do we need a float day if we're getting 10 sick days?
So the float is to offset the statutory holidays, not the float day or the sick days. So right now, other municipalities are getting Truth and Reconciliation because it's a statutory holiday. To be honest, most municipalities or several of them get 2 or 3 float days, and it's to offset those additional stat holidays that come on. Because again, though other municipalities have unions that in their union agreement states any other day proclaimed they get. So it's more so it's not to offset sick, it's to offset stat.
It's also not uncommon in a lot of, especially in the government world and union world too, as well, as to have float days and personal days built into an agreement too, as well. So on top of the vacation, a lot of places will have multiple float days or personal days, depending on how you look at it too, as well. Just as a clarification.
I'm not disagreeing with any of that.
Yeah.
All I'm saying, not everybody works for the government.
Yes.
One way or the other. So I'm looking at it from the people that don't work provincial or federal or whatever. That's the only reason I'm asking some questions.
Yeah, no, it's a great question.
That's all.
Just clarification.
I just thought with 10 sick days, why do we have to throw a float day in when you can take a sick day? And that's what people do when they get sick days. They take a day off of it. That was just
Or want it.
one. Just a minute, was that one and that one? I listened to what you were. Am I still on here?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. No.
I was listening to what you were talking about, how we were going to pay for this. The second part there you talked about, Ali, was next year. Is this a tax increase next year, or is there still money to pay for the next step? As far
I'm
as,
not sure.
well,
you're
as
asking.
far as the wages going up, if we go with this,
Yep.
what you recommend, you said this year the next 6 months we were okay with what you had
Mhm.
in the thing. Next year, are we still okay for what's coming next year, or do we have to tax the public again?
We would be taxing the public. So we would still have reserves. We're going to have our COLA adjustment each year. So I'm not going to discuss that as a tax increase every year that we would have. So this would be about 1.5% increase next year. And then 1.5% again in 2025. Keeping in mind 1% for us is 33,000.
The last one, working at home for staff. Is that not something that, I kind of agree with what you had said, being a small community, I don't know why we would have to work at home.
Yeah, so
Unless it was something special that you wanted a certain individual, and I don't see why you couldn't say to that person, fine, take this, I know what you're doing, it's a project, but as far as someone being at home.
yeah, so we're more recommending the condensed work week, similar to what Public Works out May through October, they work 4-day weeks as opposed to 5. Admin staff would be looking at working 9 days as opposed to 10, but having an offset. So me being the treasurer and clerk, the finance clerk and I could not be off on the same days, right? So that offset. The working from home for us, we're too small for the most part. It would mostly just be in special circumstances of, you have a furnace person coming today and they're coming between 9 and 4. Those type of things that they could still get work done at home, but not a regular basis thing. Again, we're too small for us to be accommodating the public and working from home. So that's not really our recommendation.
No, there was one other one, but I forgot. Anyways.
We can come back if we need to, so it's
Yeah,
fine, so,
that answered those questions. Thank you.
very good. Gerald?
Thank you, Deputy Reeve. Carol, can we dumb it down for me? So what's 1.5% work for a ratepayer? Just so that everybody that's listening or seeing, so they know what the 1.5 is, give or take, because you know the numbers better than anyone. What was 1.5 work to per ratepayer?
49.5
Yeah.
Pardon me?
49.5.
per year, $49,500.
Because when you did the actual taxation for the year, you were able to break it down and say it's $20 per household.
No, I broke it down off assessment. Everyone's assessment is different, so I couldn't tell you what it's going to affect each household.
Okay, you wouldn't be able to even ballpark it. I know I'm not asking you to give a concrete number. I'm saying so that we can have an idea. Like I understand everybody's houses. One house is worth 1.5 million, but one house is worth 350,000. I'm saying on average.
What was our tax increase?
We were 4.52, but we were only 1.72 because of growth.
Yeah,
And that equaled.
$20. I remember you gave
A
us a number.
year, a year.
Yeah, so for every ratepayer, $20 a year is just going to be basically just the increase for the staffing.
Depending on their assessment. That's
Yes,
$195,000 assessment, yeah.
Give or take. Okay.
Like if you pay $4,000 in taxes, it would mean an extra $40 basically.
Approximately.
Approximately.
Yeah.
On extra.
Just so that everybody that's watching it, they can kind of
Mhm.
ballpark it. It's nice to know numbers. It's it's great to throw it up here and say it's $90,000 a year, but there's a difference between saying 90,000 and what does that cost me individually?
And that also doesn't take into account like all of any new growth, so any new.
No, there's
housing, so that's why, no, it's a great question just to help clarify.
Yeah.
it,
But we
because,
also saved them 4% last year
no
from us doing 2 or 3 jobs each.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it makes it not seem like as big of a
Mhm.
dent when you break it down to bring a big number
Mhm.
to a smaller number. It actually makes people feel more confident about saying, hey, this is going to cost us $100,000 this year, $100,000 next year. When you can break it down and say it's actually costing you $20, which works out to $1.50 a month.
Right,
It's not so bad when you break it down like that.
sure.
No, Jim's good. I mean, I'll
Well,
let
last
Jim-
question.
before I spin over
Yeah.
this side here, I'll just keep facing this way and I'll
Yeah,
let Jim.
last
finish off
question.
Right now.
When you were talking about having the inside staff working that and getting 1 day off, as you said, the outside staff worked their 10-hour days.
Mhm.
But I was under the impression that the outside staff did that because it couldn't take holidays in the wintertime. And that was one of the reasons why they worked 4 10-hour days.
They work the 410s during the construction season because they can get more accomplished in 4 10-hour days as opposed to 8s where they do their toolbox meeting, get it set up, and it's only
But when that was
6
brought
hours
in,
left.
And I was back a couple times in council before, I was brought in, one of the main reasons was because it couldn't take holidays in the winter. Wasn't the idea until the last time before here that they said it was that way.
I wasn't here at that time, so I can't speak to that, but I
But that
think
was the
that,
reason, that's, I'm just wondering why inside staff it's 9 days instead of, it's just,
So we're working the same amount of hours, just so everybody is aware. And the compressed work week is not uncommon. That's what other municipalities are doing to be competitive, especially when you can't compete with wages, which we cannot compete with wages. So Drummond North Elmsley is a prime example. Drummond North Elmsley has a CAO, a clerk, and a treasurer that amounts to about $344,000 a year. Currently us, we're at 108. So that's a big difference. So I think that we need to take into consideration that if we can't compete with wages, we have to make sure that we're at least competing with the same type of benefits that those municipalities are also giving those staff with the competitive wages. So I think that that's more where it's coming from, Jim, is that it has zero impact on the budget, but it has an impact as far as being able to be competitive with these townships that we cannot financially be competitive with.
but if we agree to this step, or this option 1, our days in that are gonna go up.
But we're still not competitive though. As far as group 1 and group 2, we're still like bottom 3 pairs of just our competitors that we used.
And it's a good question for sure too as well. I think that's another part of it too as well, is looking at once again, your cost to your budget, your labor budget too. It's like, what is that percentage at? And if like, we're still showing a lower number, and not to throw Reeve Jennings under the bus here, but I know in Carlton Place, they have the same sort of system as far as working like a compressed week too as well, which is not uncommon for that staff. And it's tricky because it's trying to maintain people, and I hear that too as well. But I mean, the competitive market right now of trying to find staff in the municipalities is getting really difficult. I mean, we just, the county, like we're trying to hire another planner. We just lost the only planner we have, so now we're trying to find 2 planners, and it's like we're not getting applications for it. I know there's other places that are looking for that too as well.
Mhm.
If we lost, Allison tomorrow, we'd probably have to hire 2 people at more money. But those two people together would cost more than that too as well. So I'd say this is where that tricky side of it too as well is, like, I think anyways, is it's a bit of a jump, but it just shows how sort of uncompetitive we are too as well, and just trying to at least get to a competitive stage.
7
In my
years.
thoughts.
Like she said, we're 7 years behind, and a lot's happened. Unfortunately, COVID, 7 years.
Labor's a tricky one, but I mean, like, and I always bring this back is the labor budget to your labor budget to your dollars coming in, and what does that percentage look like? I mean, if you're in the private business and you had a 30% labor budget, I'm sure you're probably going, oh my God, that's a little high, because it would be. But in the public markets, it's a little bit different. So anyways, I'll spin over to this side if we have any questions on this side.
Yeah.
Take it away, Morgan.
Okay, a few things. Can we go back to that bonus thing, the steps
Merit?
and the merit? I don't think I understood this. So it's a one-time payment. So technically, if you're at step 6, you're doing an amazing job, and we say we want to give Valley, 50% merit. And the next year you do an amazing job, and we want to give you 50%. Like, you're never going to increase. You'll always
It's
stay.
every year you would get that ability to do a merit.
But it doesn't stay. Is that my understanding? Like, you don't go from
You stay at
whatever
step
the number is
6.
there.
You stay at
One
step 6,
Okay.
but these will be adjusted based on COLA every year. So let's say it's 1%, this will change 1%. Council would have the ability, I'm just using my position as an example because it's me. So then if 2023, if I'm at step 6, okay, and council says, yeah, she did a great job. Like I said, we're going to give her 50% of that merit, which is 1.5% of a step, because a full merit is 3%. In 2024, you set goals and objectives, and I meet, I exceed. In budget, you approve a 1% change in the grid. So my pay went up 1%. I do a performance appraisal and I meet and exceed, but council says, you know what? No, we're not going to give her merit. I would have got a 1% increase.
Okay. So there still is like
Yes.
compound interest, like increase each year,
Yes.
you will go up. It's not
Yes.
just, we can keep giving you the
That's right.
50% and then that's it, like
Cost of
you.
living upgrade.
Cost of living.
Lose your-
That's why merit is solely based off of council's decision for all of the positions. The clerk administrator wouldn't have the ability to give anyone merit without approving it through council.
But the annual review of the step, that would only increase by COLA, or there would be, again, like a similar sort of review for competitiveness? What I'm trying to say is, it sounds kind of like if you hit step 6, you might have incentive to do a good job for 2-3 years, but after that, you're like, well, there isn't really an increase. It's a one-time payout. I continue to make $125,000.
So you're gonna change based off cost of living every year. And then it's just, instead of this, the merit would then allow for a step increase if somebody's exceeding what is required of them. But it would still be a cost of living adjustment, just like any other pay grid.
And the merit amount would increase
It would be 3% of
With-
your top step.
the cost of living increase as well.
Yeah.
It would continue to go.
Yeah.
Okay. The work from home piece, I don't, like, I see we are adding the condensed work week.
Mhm.
But unless I missed it completely, but I don't see any mention of like this flexibility on this.
That would be a separate policy. So we've only brought forward changes to current policies for review. If we were going to accommodate, which right now we do because of the pandemic, it's kind of carried forward. We don't have very often that it happens. That I think we had the ice storm staff work from home. An exceptional item like that we're still available to the public to assist, but working from home. So we would bring back a separate policy in relation to that so that,
It wouldn't be a part
no.
of this policy that like
no,
as required or as.
no,
needed,
we would do a
whatever.
separate policy so it was very clear.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, why is it, so if a holiday listed above, except Remembrance Day, falls on a Saturday or Sunday, it shall be recognized the following Monday or any other day proclaimed. So if Remembrance Day falls on Saturday or Sunday, it's essentially forfeit?
Yeah.
Why is that?
A lot of other municipalities, I don't know why that was implemented at that time, but a lot of other municipalities give a float day as opposed to Remembrance Day. Because again, similar to schools and things like that, that sometimes when you're not there, you're less likely to actually take part in the types of things that you're supposed to be taking part in on those days. So I'm not sure why it's worded like that. I wasn't here at that time. I don't know if any other council members were.
My understanding was that the office was open, but they still got it as a float at Christmas,
Christmas,
at the
that's my
shutdown.
understanding.
So they didn't technically lose it, it's just the office didn't close, it was just added to the bank for between Christmas and New Year's.
But if it's a Saturday or Sunday, it states that we don't get it.
Yeah, it just
But in the
basically
past, the
says-
practice, I believe, was that it did get
Okay.
added in at Christmas, because the office closed.
Okay.
It's better clear wording now. Wording needs to be there. What you
Okay.
put in it.
Or should it be changed to what you just said, that it would be added to the Christmas bank?
Well, I think,
Are you saying float?
no,
Oh.
because I think what we're doing now is that the stat does bump to either a Monday or a Friday.
That might be what's happening. I wasn't aware again.
No, but right now, so if the stat falls on a Saturday or Sunday, you're gonna lose it
Mhm,
That's what it says.
in your new policy?
mhm.
Still?
Well, it's still the same, yeah.
Same.
We
I
didn't
thought
change
we were
it.
changing.
Yeah. Like, right now, when we close the office.
Okay, so I don't.
Yeah, me neither.
Well, right now, when we close the offices, sorry, between Christmas and New Year's, what do people use for all that?
Vacation time.
Oh, they do use, I thought there was a
Mhm.
couple, I thought they were like.
No,
Jack
we use
said,
vacation time.
Okay.
Do employees have the option to not use their vacation time and?
And
to
come
work
in,
over
yep.
Christmas? Okay, so they're not forced to use
Nope.
up a ton of their vacation just
No.
because the office is closed. Okay, I think that was my only question. I also just wanted to say I'm 100% supportive of a condensed work week. I think that, if we treat our staff well, it'll make them more likely to stay, and certainly that as benefits expand and increase for all, it benefits all, so I think that's a great idea.
Morgan, I think, Morgan, I'm just gonna drill one other question.
more of a statement for everybody. So the numbers up there are today's numbers for everybody, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Ali. Those numbers go up every year, step 1 through 6, based on COLA. Just so everybody can understand.
So I'm not gonna
what
say it's a guaranteed to. If we have some kind of a recession and CPI is a negative amount,
Absolutely, no,
we would have
I'm
that discussion.
Bearing a extreme,
Of a zero.
extreme change, but
Yeah.
I think based on today, if everything kind of went back up by 1.5%, we'll use that number
Mhm.
because it's been throwing around. All those numbers across the board go up by 1.5%. So that if you're on, if somebody
Yes.
was, let's say, in a step 2 and you didn't think they would deserve step 3, they're still getting a 1.5% increase. I just wanted to make everybody kind of aware
Mhm.
how it's going, because it's not those numbers, and it doesn't guarantee that next year you're getting step 2. You might still be at step 1, but with a 1.5% increase.
you only move a step with a positive performance appraisal.
I just, because I know we are doing this live and on air.
Yeah.
Anybody who's watching, if they want to understand it or don't fully understand it, it makes it
Yep.
a
You have
little
to
more.
earn the step. is what you see
Yes.
at the end of the day.
That's
So
right.
That's the biggest thing. You're not giving the step, you have to earn the step. So it's, and a lot of that we.
So then this may eventually get reviewed. Let's say we'll throw this 10 years down the line, if there was ever a big change again.
So we're going to not have big changes like this happen because
hope.
we're gonna keep track of market every 2 years and just make sure everything's
still-
kosher, everything looks good. So you don't have these big gaps. That's kind of our issue.
Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. I'm gonna go read that. I got it working.
Sorry, I just follow up
Yeah,
on
it's
that.
fine.
Is there flex ability for council to just go beyond this? To just say, clerk administrator, we want to pay 150,000?
Yeah, so you can always red circle an employee, which just basically means that they're outside of the grid. But when you're red circled, you don't get cost of living adjustments, like you're red circled because you're already over and above. It's up to council to enter into contracts, and other municipalities have that as well, where certain positions are red circled or not on the grid. It's always an option for council, but this is the public facing grid.
Right, but we have, like, this isn't like, we're not about to like sign our names in blood. Like, if we decide that
No.
we want to pay someone up.
Like if I was to leave and let's say I was to leave and you had to bring somebody in for 160,000, you could absolutely bring them in for that.
Okay.
Yep.
We can make that decision as a council, so. it's a-
Yep.
Question, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
Regina.
So Carlton Place is just in the process again of going through an update, and we aren't as far behind as what Montague is. But I can tell you, because it's on my side, there is a lot of work involved, and yes, you pay a consultant, but they don't factor into what the cost is that staff has put into it, because as much as you're hiring a consultant, you're providing all the data to them and you're doing all the legwork. And then when it comes back, you're still working through rewriting all those job descriptions and doing the whole thing that our staff have done for us. So the savings that she has, not only just the 10 that we budgeted for, but the extra that's gone into this. It's unfortunate because pay grids need to be reviewed on a regular basis. So whether it be 3 years, 2 years, whatever the case may be, because that's what happens. And it did happen to other municipalities. I know that there are at least 3 in Lanark County that are actually in the process of putting an RFP out for reviews because it got forgotten during COVID and everything else. And when they do these, there are huge increases, and you look at what's the best so that it's the most minimal impact to your residents because of the fact, but competitiveness is huge. Like not only in Lanark County, but in Leeds, Granville, it is unbelievable right now trying to recruit. And the additional agreements that are being put into place to not just look at pay and benefits, but additional over and above to get staff, just because of the fact that it's their market. So the fact that as a small municipality, if we can do some things to keep our staff, because it's not just what are you paying that person. When we start from scratch again and we have to start and retrain people, there's additional cost to that. So the little bit that we can do, and I mean, it's not a little bit when there's a cost impact, but this is something that hopefully forward-thinking councils are going to think about on a regular basis and are going to be receptive to doing this review and recognizing that it is an unfortunate thing to have to compete to some of our other comparables. But I think what we've got some excellent staff, and if we can keep moving forward, because I'll toot Ally's horn in that the money she has brought us in grants, the money that she has been able to keep us afloat and get ahead is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Not to, and then we also have Steve, sorry, but I mean, in putting together cost savings of doing jobs because something's on the budget for next year, but it makes more sense and we're gonna save our money to do that this year with another project. That's why we need to keep these staff, because if not, every year that you put stuff off, it costs even more, so it's very important. So I'm just in support of what all of our council have said, and
I think ratepayers would be happy to pay a higher rate rather than not have a public works manager and no roads are getting fixed,
Well,
nothing's
the thing
happening,
is,
it just, yeah.
if you look at paying contract, because that's just it, if you can't get the bodies into those positions, and as Deputy Reeve Carroll mentioned, the county and how they cannot get planners up there, we're at the mercy of the county. Yes, we have planning here, but we also have that upper tier level that we have to deal with. And when we don't have them up there, it's impacting us. We are delayed because we have lack service there. And I mean, they've advertised, they've rewritten job descriptions, they've reevaluated. And it's just, it's a market right now that we're scrambling, and it's just going to keep going. I'm one of those people that I'm going out based on my age, and we don't have the volumes coming in, and we've been hit like with CBOs and planners and everything else, that it's just, it is huge.
Thank you, Rita. Yeah, I think that's a really big point, to make sure that we recognize, especially the people that we have too as well, and to try to make sure that we keep them and that we move forward. I mean, it makes a big difference when you're like, you hit it right on with Steve too as well. I mean, what he brings to the table for us too as well, and the cost savings. So like when people say, well, you're paying that much more, but I mean, there's the savings that we get out of it too as well, and the better services we get out of it, I think is a massive part. So
If I can with that, just to, don't want to just toot my horn and Steve's, I want to, it's
staff.
all of
Yeah,
staff.
yeah.
You know, we have staff that volunteer their time on weekends to go paint kids' faces.
Yes.
We have, you know, we have all those things that we have our junior planner saved us money in our zoning amendment, our
Yes.
OP and all those things. So, and our public works crew, they never call in, like they're always here on those storms and all those things. So we just, as a collaboration, I
Yeah.
think that it's just that it's not just, I know this is a number,
Yeah.
the number of volunteer hours that are also happening from staff, I think, again, and nobody's looking for praise on that, but just, there is really good staff here. The Township of Montague has people that care about the community. They care about their jobs and putting their best foot forward. So I think as a collaboration and staff, because otherwise we're all one person that cannot accomplish anything. So as a team,
That's it.
you move forward. So I just want to make sure that we
Yeah.
say that everyone is participating in that and creates
Yeah.
what's happening here.
no, that's a great point, Ali. The leader, like that's a good point from our leader too as well, to recognize the people that's here too as well. Because I mean, right now, I mean, we've scrambled in the past. We've gone through that, trying to find and trying to get people in place and everything else. And we are probably right now the best township as far as set up with great people and positions filled, and doing it with an appropriate budget too as well, and keeping that labor line under control, which I think is great. So let's see if we can move on. Oh, you have a question? Sorry.
No,
Yeah,
no
sorry,
question.
Jim.
I just want to agree with what Ali, excuse me, was saying about the staff and that helping out in recreation and all the events. I mean, all staff has been helping. On previous councils, we were lucky if one staff member from this township ever came up help to do anything. So I personally see a big difference. And I was just asking those questions because I was curious. It wasn't that I wasn't for the staff on that.
It's your job, Jim. It's your job.
100%. I think that's the biggest thing, is that those are good questions, because I think if Ali presented this and we all just kind of sat here and said, okay, I think that would, you know what I mean, that we need to ask those questions, and I think that's great that those questions are asked. So I'd say, yes, Joe.
And again, to reiterate everything, we've seen what not the best staff here can do. And we can see what you guys put out, and thank you for that.
It is, I mean, I have a great amount of pride being the deputy regent of this township just because of the quality of people that we have, along with the residents too as well. We have just a quality township, and it's just, I mean, we should be proud for where we live for sure. So let's move on. I think option one sounds like that everybody is agreement with. Thank you, Joe.
I'm sorry,
and
just say one more thing.
For sure, yeah.
Just because I'm just unfamiliar with process and I'm not sure if we're about to like enshrine this in law,
It
but
has to come back.
okay.
Back, yeah.
Okay.
So this is just
Then
the
I
committee
can
as a
just-
whole, and
yeah.
then so we have everything done here, and then it comes back to council for us for the
Here's
sort of
my
final
notes.
stamp of approval. 100%. So there is still time, obviously, to bring
Okay.
back a question
Mhm.
and anything else too, as well as we go into the
Just unfair things.
it's
So
a-
I just didn't make
Yeah.
a lot right now.
yeah. So clear it up, and that's great. So we're all in agreement for option one then, as far as presented. Yeah. It's just something else that you're just saying. Yeah. Okay, agreeing. Yeah. So I'm just gonna fire that out there. So option one is approve the recommended changes to the pay grid as per option one presented this date, and mark the policies as presented this date. The council direct the clerk administrator treasurer to bring forth a report to in camera, discuss the individual employees and the change required for the grid adjustments in meeting on June 6th. 20th, because yes, 2023. All right, so moved by Councillor Kenny and seconded by Councillor Abbas. The council direct the clerk administrator with option one as presented this date. All in favor? Okay, thanks, folks. That was a good discussion. That was good. The next thing on our docket is the animal control bylaw update, and I'll let Ali just take that away.
Sure, thank you, Chair. So our animal control bylaw, similar to our property standards bylaw, is relatively old and out of date. So at this time, I do have questions into Tony Fleming, our lawyer, solicitor for the municipality, to get a response as far as our ability to change some of the wording in the bylaw. I think that our intention in this municipality is to provide for a safe place, and we are having a little bit of issues in relation to the animal control bylaw. So we want to make sure that we make changes that are going to accommodate, or at least have discussions to make changes to accommodate and look after our community. So again, I'm waiting on information back from legal as to the exact wording and type of changes that we can make. So at this point, I'm asking the council direct myself to not approve any further kennels or licensing until such time that the bylaw is reviewed and options are provided from legal on the rights of the township.
Yeah, I mean, I'll open it up right to council, and then I can have some comments after. So let's say, go ahead, Joe.
So do we have a duration, a timeline, or are we just putting, because I know what this all stems from, and you know, unfortunate events, and I don't wish any ill on anyone, but to put something and impose it on everyone as a direct or indirect result is there's a certain amount of unfairness to it. Like, I get it, but that's what I'm saying. What type of timeline are we looking at? Like, is it a week? Is it a month? Is it 6 months?
So we should have a response for our next meeting. It's just that I want to make sure that we get everything discussed with the lawyer as far as staffing. So my intention is to have it at the June 20th meeting.
So we're talking about putting on hold for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And just for clarification on that, on Joe's question, how many kennels do we usually approve every year?
We have about 3.
That we know that we have 3 in total in the township.
Yes.
Yes. So like, how many we
No,
approve?
we have 3 that we have approved.
3 that are licensed.
I don't know how many are unlicensed.
Touche. Yeah. So we have 3 that have approved like so far ever in the
Yes.
township.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the issue with this, and not to go against the whole thing, the kennels are supposed to be anybody who has over 3 dogs. if I'm not mistaken, under our current municipality.
Yes.
So anybody who has over 3 dogs is supposed to have a kennel license, no different than anybody who has chickens and is not supposed to, is not, you know what I'm saying? So the issue with doing this is if somebody wanted to follow the law and saw everything that's going on, they can't legally have their their 4th dog, which they probably already have, and it prevents them from having their dog, even though it might be a wonderful dog. So I'm saying, like, I'm okay with doing this very short term, because it means that people are trying to follow in the law, can't. But I get that there's people that don't follow in the law, but if somebody wants to do their due diligence, drive the speed limit, they can't. So that's why I'm saying I'm willing to push it for 2 weeks, but I'm not willing to push it any further than that.
And that's fair, for sure, yeah. And I think also if there's people out there that are concerned about that, our staff are easy people to deal with. Contact our staff so that they can work with them on a one-on-one basis and walk them through that process. If it does go a little bit longer, I can hear what you're saying, but just to make sure that but yes,
We're right now bringing this up like we did the chickens. It highlights something.
Yeah.
So now if somebody decides that, I don't like Jim Bob on the corner and I see he's got 4 Shih Tzus, well,
Yeah.
he's in contravention of the law. So I just want to make sure that there's a reason to defer it, or if we're going to do this, that we're doing it with no malice in intent. Because as much as we're trying to make sure that we're doing the best intentions, it could also be a hindrance.
valid, yes. You got something, Vern, or? Maybe, okay. Okay, that's fine. We can come back if there's a second there at all. Does anybody else have any other comments at all? or-
Yes, I remember what.
She's got it, okay.
Yeah. Sorry. Once this thing is out of me, I swear to God, I will get smarter again. How long does it take? Like if someone applies for a kennel license, how long does it take? I know if someone like applies for a severance, it takes like a year. So if someone applies for a kennel license, does it take like a month? Does it take 2 days? Does it take?
No, so a kennel license doesn't take that length of time. Now our process has changed because we've changed animal control officers. Previously, the previous animal control officer approved everything. We've now changed it that it has to go through planning, bylaw, and then ultimately myself to be signed off. So that is a change, which means there's more eyes looking at it, a little more detail into going into it. So that has changed as far as the process. But again, our animal control bylaw is old, similar to our property standards. And now that we have a newer person coming in and looking at these, they're providing recommendation on moving forward. And that's what municipal bylaw enforcement has been doing with us, is saying, okay, here's some gaps. You need to speak to council or recommend to council some potential options to fill those gaps. So that's what we're looking at doing. Unfortunately, we had an incident that's really prioritizing this for us. So that's why it's in front of you this evening, and it's gone to legal to make sure that what we would be presenting to council for changes would be a legal option for us, and it should be on the 20th.
Okay. So even what I'm trying to get at is like, it could even, like, if you applied for a kennel license, it might even take 2 weeks by the time it gets through all of these people and gets back to you anyways, so.
If I take holidays for 2 weeks.
Yeah,
yes.
it's not too much of a imposition if we are sort of pausing on people that are trying to do the right thing. Okay.
No.
But bear in mind, we only have 3 in the entire township.
We
Yeah,
have
we don't have
three
to
licensed.
License, like we don't have people lining up at the door right now asking for a kennel license.
Yeah.
So like it's I think that's just to bear in mind. Yes. Julian? I don't know why I looked at you there. Any other comments at all? Okay, then we'll move on from that one. That's perfect. So moved by Councillor Abbas and seconded by Councillor Crabtree. The council direct the clerk administrator to not approve any further kennel license until such time the bylaw is reviewed and options are provided from legal to the rights on the rights of the township. All in favor? That's carried. Our next one is actually some nice news as we made a great call a couple weeks ago on the soccer field to try to figure out what we're gonna do going forward, and I'll let Ally kind of walk through it a bit.
Thank you, Chair. So at the previous meeting of Committee of the Whole, committee did recommend to council that we not put the 20,000 plus additional costs into the soccer field on the school board property, and in fact use those funds to start establishing our 22-acre recreational space with getting pricing for a parking lot, having a sliding hill, walking trails, those type of things that will strengthen our grant applications for washrooms and ball fields and all those good things. With that being said, the school board came back to us and had noted that things went kind of sideways in the sense that we're not going to provide funding for those things. So they've come back and noted that they'll supply and apply the topsoil and seed. They'll put in the soccer posts, pay for the soccer posts and put them in the nets. They'll draft an agreement for the access at the back from the 22 acres to the soccer fields at their cost. We would have a cost for our legal to still review it, but they'll establish the agreement. We would only need additional parking if there was overflow, if the school parking lot was already booked, like if the gym was booked for something and the parking lot was being used. Rentals would still need to go through the school board because they would look after the grass cutting and all those things, as we had indicated before. Users would still need to purchase that insurance. So I think this is fair, to be honest, because the township back in 2009, 2010 put substantial funds into that property at no cost to the school board. So I think this is a way to move forward, that they're also going to put some costs in. We can still start establishing our 22 acres, apply for a grant for a washroom over there that would then make soccer field more useful to community groups or the soccer associations. So I think that we're going down the correct path 13 years later to get this thing operational and used. So I think it's a good news. The only thing that we're indicating on this that's different than before is that for our 22 acres, we've hired a surveyor just to stake it all to make sure that we put our walking trails on our 22 acres and not the neighbors' properties. And then we'll get pricing back to council after the summer break on starting to establish that area as well.
So just before I open it up, I want to thank Ally for staying diligent on that. And also Carol DeFore, who is the trustee for the area. She's the new trustee, was the new elected trustee for the area too as well, for that school. She's also worked diligently too as well. Her and I have had many discussions about this too as well to try to get this going and get this fixed. So she's done a great job at advocating to make sure that we can have sort of these recreational facilities to the public. So it's kind of a good joint effort by all. So I think that was a nice bonus, and I think it came back to an understanding of what we've already invested into into that area, into the soccer pitch, and sort of how the school board can kind of help bring it back up and get the use for the community. So I think that's a very positive thing. I'm kind of looking at you. So we don't have it surveyed right now. Like when that was cut out.
It's surveyed. We've asked them basically to put to mark the pins and put wood pickets all along, so that we can just make sure that whenever we get the contractors in there to make sure that we're absolutely on our side, because the steel pickets can be a great distance apart. Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that we're not. Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. That's it. I'll open up to any questions at all from council or.
No, I was going to ask about the surveying for when we got it from the school board, but got it.
No, I just think it's great that we're finally getting started on this, and as far as the school part goes, that's fantastic, because it's just sat there for years after we did put a lot of money in it. So very good. Thanks again to the staff.
Yeah, it's positive, and it was a good effort by all. So that's good. All right. So moved by Councillor Crabtree and seconded by Reeve Jennings that council approve the offer from UCDSB on the soccer field as presented to this date, and the council approved staff to continue to advance on the 22-acre quotations. All in favor? Thanks, folks. The next one is the RFP for buildings. Take it away, Ally, again.
Thank you, Chair. At the special committee council meeting back in May 31st of 2022, council directed staff to hire IBI Group, who did the basically master plan of this, or the energy plan of this facility and building a new facility for Public Works and Fire to develop RFP documents for a Fire Public Works Municipal Complex. And at that time, IBI noted that they had interest in providing quotations, or they wanted to bid on the RFP, so they wouldn't do the documents. So staff in that time, the management team have worked together to put together the RFP for the buildings and put it out for pricing. So it closed on May 19th. In that time, the management team, with the exception of the CBO, scored the RFPs that were received. We had 25 companies pull the RFP. 5 companies attended the mandatory site meeting and 3 provided bids. IBI did not provide a bid. We're not sure why. So we did receive 3 bids. They are scored. It was in different scoring components. So you had to meet 70% in the first technical scoring component to even have your financial score opened. The one company did not meet that scoring, so we didn't even open the financial. They were disqualified from the bidding. We had 2 that did meet and met the financial scores. They were very close. They both had good RFPs. We did visit the Augusta Township Fire Hall that CKA, Colburn, Campbell and Architects, had done, and went through the whole thing and asked a number of questions to the fire chief and how things went. And, you know, he had all positive comments to make, and they did deal with some issues during the build, like drainage from the First Nation had issues with their drainage and things like that. And it all worked out smoothly. From the time the shovel hit the ground till the building was done, it was 12 months, which is fairly quick for something of that size. So, again, the pricing is here. We did budget $150,000 for engineer drawings and components. We came in slightly over, but the construction administration and that phase came in actually lower than I would have anticipated it to come in. So we are projecting about $128,000 for the first 3 phases over the 150, which, to be honest, I think we had even advised council that might be low. But we do still have modernization funds from the province. That was a one-time funding that is not off the back of the taxpayers to get this moving. Again, this has been something I think that's been in the works for a while. We have safety issues with fire. No matter what, we have to do something. We approved a purchase of a new truck that won't fit in our hall, so we have to do something as far as moving forward. Unfortunately, as opposed to it being done in 2019, 2020, costs have changed and increased. But it's still something that would be for the long-term impact. For the ratepayers, we're gonna have extra fire trucks, extra fire service because of those trucks, all those things. And our Public Works building is in not great condition, and also needs to be replaced. So our recommendation is to go with CKA and start the process immediately, working towards all of the design and getting this out to tender.
Thank you, Ellie. Yeah, I mean, it has been a long process, which it should be. I mean, it's a big project, obviously, to look at the building, fire halls and Public Works buildings. I mean, these are buildings we had when I don't even know when we took them over almost 40 years ago. There we go. When our population was less than half of what it is even right now, and we know it's going to grow. And what we're looking at, is exactly what Ali says, is for that future will be hopefully I'll live a long time, but we'll probably be dead and gone before they look at any sort of construction like that again. But it's something that is in need. Like, we have a fire department that's not, we're supposed to be the king of the key of safety for a fire department, and it's not. We have a Public Works building that we can't even put all of our vehicles into, and anyway, so I think this is good that we're continually moving forward. It's tricky. I mean, like those of us that were on council past, this has been thorough discussions, and maybe the odd argument. but but in good ways too as well. So I know it's a lot as we come on to it. And I think even Jim might even had those discussions even back on his council.
I just had a question when you're talking
So
about
yeah,
that.
so that's good. So yeah, take it away, Jim. Yeah.
My one question was, I seen the plans before and we've seen it. Is that what yous are doing, is going by the plans you had? Like, it was a flat roof basically before, and I have no idea why anybody would want a flat roof.
Yeah,
Chair
that's
through.
one
Okay,
question.
so I think as far as the floor plan and size,
Okay.
yes. We also agree, we don't want a flat roof.
Okay.
The center vestibule basically of Public Works and Fire, we think can be shared better to save costs there. So there's changes as far as that, but I think it's more that we're saying the size, the number of bays, yep, that's what we're looking for. But the center section, and again, from visiting other halls, you can kind of see what works, what doesn't work, which is nice. And I know that Public Works and Fire are good at sharing. So they're going to share more space, whereas right now it's very separated, to save those costs and not have, you know,
Duplicate.
well, duplicates of things that we don't need duplicates of that are costly. So there are some changes, but it's more so that this is kind of the number of bays. Yep. We're gonna change that middle part as far as layout, and none of us want a flat roof.
That was
Yeah.
my concern. That was all.
I hear you 100% on that. 'Cause the flat roof thing is, I mean, we went through the painful stake with here too as well, and that was crazy. So yeah, if we can just avoid it altogether, I think that's a great point,
Right.
Jim, for sure, 100%. So any other questions at all or comments? Awesome. All right, so we'll move on then. So that's moved by Reeve Jennings and seconded by Councillor Kenny. The council award RFP 80-2023-02 to Colburn and Kimball Architects Incorporated in the amount of $490,321 plus HST if all phases are completed, and the council approved the use of the modernization reserves to offset the additional costs for the completion of phase 1, 2, and 3. All in favor? That's carried. So we have no reports of committees, no petitions, no notices, motions, unfinished business and other business. Before we go to adjournment, do we have any burning questions from the audience? I'll start with Tom just real quick, and then I'll come to you, Sherry.
On the career site plan agreement, and he's planning to have more storage between the sheds and the existing house and the town undercoating property there?
I'll have to look at the sketch that
Isn't that what,
that my understanding is that it will be sort of around the entire length in the cul-de-sac and then an outdoor storage area between the storage structures and the dwelling.
but I noticed somebody asked what type of storage it was. Like, the person that used to live in that house, I don't know who lives in that house now, I know from before, they used to park a transport behind there that ran all night, or the reefer ran all night right behind the house. Is that, and if that happens, what can that person do? What repercussions who do they call on the weekend when it sits there and runs all night and they can't sleep, especially in the summer when they got the windows open? Who can they call to complain about it and get something done about it?
Well, I haven't had the discussion with the agent for the applicant on the new site plan yet because my focus was more answering council's questions about the things that were done that weren't allowed previously and just sort of try to get myself brought up to speed there. But all of those conversations will be had with the applicant to have the appropriate permitted uses addressed in the site plan. But if someone is going against, let's say, whether it's noise, I believe we do have provisions in a bylaw to address that. It would go to law enforcement.
Well, if,
Yeah.
I'm just questioning it
Yeah.
because I know previously a lot of this, what happened there, and I know that was one of the complaints of the people that lived in that house.
Mhm.
That used to happen on a regular basis.
Okay. I'll make notation of that to bring that up.
Because we want to approve it for storage, not for running vehicles
not-
in the background
No.
for like,
Even a trailer park there with a reefer on it that runs all night,
yeah, no,
that's
yeah.
not what you want
It's for,
behind your bedroom window.
No.
we want it for storage is what I agree, Tom, like we want it for, like you're going, you're parking your boat, you're parking your trailer there for the 6 months and it's just sitting there exactly for the winter, so I agree, yeah.
Yeah, when you have a commercial or industrial land use that's adjacent to a residential use, the whole point is to minimize any negative impacts to that dwelling. That's why the lighting component of the outdoor storage area is gonna be examined, so that it doesn't impact the dwelling on that property that I gave the wrong address for. But as well, I made a notation about the noise, and I'll bring that up with the applicant as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Sherry?
I'm gonna stand.
Sure.
I can't
Yep.
see everyone. So, Ruth Jennings, Deputy Ruth Carroll, and other councillors. Those who don't know me, my name is Sherry Menyang. I'm a resident of Montague. I live at 871 Heritage Drive. You all received a letter from me dated May 20th, voicing my opposition to the kennel license application at 790 Heritage Drive. And this letter does cite considerations taken from the Ontario Owners Liability Act as well as Montague's existing bylaws. Today, I have in hand an active petition, which is why it hasn't been submitted today, but an active petition to oppose a kennel license by 790 Heritage Drive, Montague, to breed vicious dogs. After a short 5 days, the community has rallied and we have 185 signatures on this petition, including the majority of Montague residents residing on Heritage Drive, the majority of Montague residents living in Andrewsville, and other residents residing in neighboring municipalities which are adjacent to or in close proximity to Montague, such as Merrickville, Wolford. This petition will be formally submitted to Clerk Allison, the clerk of Montague Township, ahead of the next meeting, which I believe is scheduled for June 20th. So this is it. So I do have some questions regarding the existing dog control bylaw 2752-2003, which has come up a couple times. So I understand we will be reviewing this bylaw, and I do have some questions, specifically relating to the enforcement of this bylaw. It's already come up tonight, talking about the limitation of the number of pets, as Councillor Crabtree has so spoken with regards to a kennel license. Without a kennel permit, or if you look in the bylaw, the first item says that the township, I can actually read it. It says, no person or household in the township shall keep on any lot more than a total of 3 dogs unless a special township dispensation has been granted by resolution of the council of the township. So it sounds like in addition to either a kennel license, the council can approve somebody to have more dogs without having a kennel license. So the duration of 2 weeks, we have the latitude to bring it in special cases. So that was the one item. I have a question for council, is how is more than 3 dogs on a property today enforced by bylaw? How is that actively enforced?
It's on the honesty. And unfortunately, because we are a small municipality, and anybody can tell me if I'm wrong, the only thing we can enforce is what we know. We don't have the funds, being a small municipality, to financially pay a bylaw officer to actively go looking for quote unquote problems. So if it's up to the due diligence of the animal owners, people, and this is not just this bylaw, this is actually all our bylaws, is up to the people that are doing something and like wanting to have 3 animals, or wanting to have chickens. They go do their due diligence. Now, if you see something that's not contravening the rules, the regulations, the bylaws, as it were, it's up to the public. If you see an issue, let bylaw or let Allison or the municipality know about it, and they can see what they can do in contravention of it, whether it be fines or there's, unfortunately, it becomes a cost thing. We could say, okay, well, we'll hire 2 bylaw officers to go look for every problem and say, okay, well, you have a vehicle leaking in your driveway and it's causing water damage. So we could not be financially responsible and say, okay, you know, we're just going to do that. So if you see something wrong, whether it be a dog or whether it be a lot of garbage piling up on a neighbor's property, it's really up to the municipality to care about the municipality and say, we see something wrong and let someone know about it so that we can, and again, if I'm wrong on any of this, you guys can flag me, but I've been doing as much research as I can about all these issues. So, because there's a whole bunch of bylaws coming up and there's, you know, questions about speeding. So we're trying to figure out how we can do and manage it the best we can.
So then, to summarize then, enforcement is a reactive service.
It's a complaint-based process, which is not uncommon, especially in rural municipalities. It's the common practice as far as a complaint driven to the bylaws. Yeah.
I have no question.
Yeah.
Regarding kennels, and it's again bylaw 2752, 2003, section 3. Is dog and dog owner history, such as previous bylaw contraventions or vicious dog designations, taken into consideration when reviewing a kennel license application?
Well,
Yeah,
now
we
that
go
we've
about
changed it, yes.
Okay, and I did learn today, according to the bylaw, it says it was at the discretion of the bylaw enforcement officer to approve kennel licenses, but it sounds like what I learned today when you were speaking earlier, the process has recently been changed to include planning bylaw and yourself. Yeah. Number 3, I have, again, bylaw 2752-2003, section 10, vicious dogs. Conditions listed in subsections 28 to 39, such as signage for vicious dogs, must be met by all owners of dogs deemed vicious by Montague's bylaw enforcement officer. Does vicious dog designation carry over from one municipality or province or country to another when dogs are imported into Montague? So if somebody comes into Montague and is requesting a license for their dog, do they need to disclose that their dog had previously been deemed vicious? Do you have a registry or a database?
Yeah, please go, yeah.
We do not have access to any kind of database as far as a vicious dog. It's not like it's recorded in a provincial database somewhere that we would have. That would be a question that we would ask, and especially based on different breeds that would be getting tagged. But in that case, again, it's up to the owner being honest and advising of that.
So there's no system that actually when a dog is deemed vicious or dangerous, let's say in Canada, province-wide or per province, that designation travels with the owner and the dog, so that if the dog owner gives the dog away, there's no mechanism to track that there's a vicious dog in another neighborhood.
Like a provincial database type of, like a
Or
driver's
even-
license type
or
thing?
even in the case of Montague, so for example, I'll take myself, let's say my dog was deemed vicious by bylaw. So now I have that designation with all of the requirements that I must meet for a vicious dog. If I move, who's gonna know I have a vicious dog if I move? Because according to the law, bylaw or law enforcement, that dog has an infraction against it, just like, you know, if you have a driving offense, that travels with you regardless of where you go. So I guess
So sorry, Sherry. So based on DOLA, if it's a restricted or banned dog based on DOLA, the owner has to provide you notice if they move, right? So that's one of those questions that we've asked legal is, do we have the ability to make the person do that? And if they do, then we would, if we knew where they were moving and we had the ability to ask where they were moving, we could send that information to that municipality. but there's no database like a driver's license. It would solely be on staff and council doing their due diligence and setting the bylaws up. If we have the ability to, again, we're getting information back from legal on our exact rights from a municipal standpoint.
Okay, so then there's nothing today when bylaw deems something that somewhere gets input into the system so that you have that data to use.
No, because some municipalities don't, everybody's bylaws are different.
Right.
So
But
some of them may not even
within
have.
Montague itself.
Yeah, so again, when we look at those things, that's where we're looking to say, what can we do better?
Cause they're not in Montague, not in the county, they're not in the province, they're not, I mean, that's a great idea to have, I mean,
But even starting just within Montague, so if bylaw enforcement comes back and there's a tag on something somewhere, it gets released into your database, so that when they come to renew licenses or whatever, you have that relevant information. And my last question pertains to licensing. I think we talked about whether or not the owners have to disclose that information to you, and the answer is it's on the honor system. However, has the township ever considered tiered licensing to take into account regular dogs and then dogs that have been deemed vicious or dangerous? So if you have that, there's an additional licensing fee.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of questions into legal right
Yes,
now that
no,
I can't,
I
and I
understand.
think
I'm just raising a
absolutely, and these are all things that we have discussed internally, and that's why we're trying to get legal. And hopefully on the 20th, we have those answers to be able to bring back a draft bylaw of what we can propose or what our legal ability is. But that is some of those questions as well.
Okay, well, I thank you for your time. I will be submitting on behalf of a lot of people who've been working very hard on this petition ahead of your meeting.
Sherry, we obviously thank you for the questions, and I think it's good also too as well to make sure that if there was any questions, which I think we've nailed them pretty well, but it's as far as going to legal, but I think this is perfect because it puts it out on record too as well as far as the extra questions to make sure that they're being answered. So that's great, and obviously yes, the petition is a great tool that we look forward to having submitted to as well. So.
And I think and if there's any other questions, feel free to email me as well prior to the 20th, just to make sure that I kind of hit all the points as well to legal.
Okay, definitely be in contact with you. So thank you for your time.
Hold on one second, Tom. I'll come to you. Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Leanne Mundy. I moved to Montague Township in 2005, and it's the best thing we ever did. It's a wonderful community to be a part of. I live at 791 Heritage Drive, directly across from the property that is requesting the license for kenneling. And I am encouraged to hear that you're going to take a look at the bylaws, and I ask you to really seriously consider them. We have been challenged on several occasions by the dogs who are meant to be contained as they come roaring down their driveway towards ours. We can't safely get our mail because we are afraid, because we're afraid the dogs are going to come at us. My grandchildren can't play in the front yard with their dog because we're concerned about the issue of vicious dogs. So as you review the bylaws for animal control, I urge you to look at the different categories of dogs and really seriously consider the issue of vicious dogs and their impact on the community. And, you know, as a resident of Montague, we deserve to live safely in our own homes and our own front yards.
Thank you, Ms. Mundy. Mrs. Mundy, that's great. I know Allison obviously has taken notes from that too as well. I think it's John too as well. Yeah. I'll come to you.
Thanks for giving me a chance to ask a question and just make a few comments on the other 791 Heritage Drive, and my name is John Mundy. First, a process question.
Thank you, Allison, for giving us some information about the process and for the 2-week delay for consideration. I want to make sure I understand the process. Is the process that staff make a recommendation to council in what I would call a special case involving vicious dogs and the killing of vicious dogs? Or is the process that a decision goes up through several layers of staff and staff, not council, makes the ultimate decision?
So Chair, through you. So currently, the review of the bylaw will be staff recommending to council a change or potential changes in the bylaw. And at that time of the review, that will all be included. Right now, it's up to staff. In the bylaw, though, there may be those situations where vicious dogs, if permitted, would go to council for a kennel license. I think that there's a number of aspects. I can't speak to all of it because, again, we don't have legal response back. We're looking at the whole picture, and from one end to the other of from banning to, you know, what kind of implementations can happen. So I can't speak on the exact, but we'll be bringing back recommendations to council to pass bylaws that we would look after as staff.
Okay. So does this mean in 2 weeks' time, you could make a decision on pending applications for kennels?
So again, depending, we should have legal response by then. It's normally a fairly quick turnaround. And then at that time, it would be dependent on what comes back from legal as far as restrictions and all those, our ability to do those things. So I can't speak on exactly what would be implemented.
Okay. I think part of the approach that we're taking in the petition and in voicing our concern is to make a distinction between a vicious dog and a vicious dog is a dog that has been deemed vicious through a process. It's not just an adjective. And dogs or other animals that are not vicious. The second thing is, as you look at approaching a review of a change in the bylaw, the devil is in the detail on a lot of this stuff. And I urge you to look at what is the difference between a dog that is resident on the property and a dog that is visiting a property. And how in a bylaw can you give guidance on what is a visiting dog? Is a visiting dog a dog that is there for a day? Is a visiting dog a dog that is there for 3 months? And it can create a whole host of problems for everybody if you don't think through that aspect of this particular issue.
Yeah.
Chair, through you. So that is also one of the discussions we had as far as a visiting dog and a resident or permanent dog, in the sense of, you know, is it a week, is it a month of visiting? Because some people go south for a month and you take your parents' dog for a month or something along those lines. So those are all discussions that we've also had. So we have put a lot of thought, I feel we've put a lot of thought into what's going to come forward, and kind of looked at those type of aspects as well. Yeah.
So these are obviously, like, these are great questions
Yeah.
that are brought up perfectly in the public too as well, because it's basically where we're going down the direction too as well with legal and everything else. And everything that is brought forth to by staff, even as recommendations on June 20th. That's where more of a discussion can be made too as well. And I'm sure you'll be back. And if there's more sort of questions as we go, right? I mean, we want to get it right too as well, right? So, and I think that's a big part of it. So I thank the questions that come in, because it's just gonna help us make sure that we're making the right decisions and getting the right answers from legal too as well, so that's perfect. Sure.
Deputy Carroll, I have a quick question just so I can make it easier on my own. So we keep using the term vicious dog. Are we talking about a specific dog? Are we talking about breed of dog? Because all this is
deemed vicious by the bylaw.
but based on a situation that arises? Okay,
Can
so
I speak to this?
For sure, Sherry, yeah.
Okay, so your bylaw states definition of a vicious dog. It's in, sorry. Vicious, okay. It's in the bylaw subsection 10, where,
Perhaps at the start, please
sorry,
give the
yeah,
definitions.
I had it, and, vicious dog, thank you. Vicious dog shall mean, according to the bylaw, a dog which, without provocation, has bitten a person or a domestic animal, or any dog with a known propensity, tendency, or disposition to attack without provocation a person or domestic animal, or a dog which shows the disposition or tendency to be threatening or aggressive, or a dog which is attack trained and or is kept for the purposes of security or protection, whether residential, commercial, or industrial, of a person's property. So there's nothing to do with breed specificity in any of it.
so what I'm saying, my understanding of this is shy of, so before this incident happened, you guys were not being able to get your mail. Shy of you guys making the phone call to bylaw, it would never have been deemed vicious. So I'm just saying, without people doing their due diligence, we can't do anything on our end either. So I'm putting it back, we all have to work as a team, so without the support on your end, maybe, and it's unfortunate, but maybe this could have been prevented. But it's just, we all have to do our due diligence, and if you see something wrong, let us know.
Without an incident, there won't be a law.
But she said there was incidents, and that's why I'm saying.
There was, as far as threatening those.
Which is in that
Which is
definition.
in the definition.
Yeah, so that's why what I'm suggesting is that if there's ever, and this is also for people that are listening right now as well, if they see an issue, raise it to us, that way we can flag it as being vicious, because that term vicious can be thrown around and mean a whole lot of things, but without there being actually the work to give that definition to something, it doesn't exist.
It's vicious, as defined in the bylaw.
It's vicious as defined in the bylaw, but you're talking about having a title as for fees and to make sure that we can put like a branding on this animal, but without there being that incidence or that somebody calls it in, we don't know that it's a vicious animal. Shih Tzu can be a vicious animal. My dog got attacked by one, and he's a big dog. So like, I'm not trying to make a laughing matter. I'm saying that term, when you were throwing it around, I just wanted to make sure there was some sort of definition for everybody listening.
It's a description of a behavior or an
A trait.
event, not a breed or dog type.
Thank you.
Perfect. Tom?
Now that you're talking about that, now the township allows a secondary residence on the same property. What happens if the first resident has 2 dogs and the secondary residence has 2 dogs? Who is required to get the kennel license?
So it's the property owner. So you might have 2 homes on one lot, but somebody's the owner of that property.
Primary owner of the property.
Right? So you're only allowed 3 dogs on the property. So if somebody's renting the other house, if the owner registers their 2 dogs first, whoever the next people are that come in would have to get a kennel.
Okay,
You see what I'm saying?
I'm just thinking like, the second person's gonna have 2 dogs, but maybe when you're writing your bylaw, you should cover that in there so that may never come up, that question.
It may never come up.
But it's just there's an idea where they can have 2 dogs and they can have 2 dogs. It's on the same property. But Who's responsible for the kennel license?
Special dispensation. In the bylaw, you can grant special dispensation.
Council
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a kind of license, it could just be that, yeah, you're allowed to have that fourth, you're just allowed to have that fourth dog, exactly, yeah,
It's
yeah.
already written in.
So, I mean, that's encouraging, I think what Councilor Crabtree brought up too as well, if there is somebody out there that goes, oh, I have, you know, I mean, 4 dogs, I mean, let us know. Well, you know, like, I mean, if it's going smooth, then obviously, why would we, you know, say no? So it's so I think it's a great point, so. There's a question in the back there too as well. I think it's the most questions we've had since I've been on council.
A couple of doors down from my neighbors here, and I have been bitten by a dog, and all I want is to make sure that my community is as safe as anybody else's community to live in. And I hope you remember, that's the important part, calling a dog vicious or whatever. What's important is a safe place to live for the people who are there.
So your point is I think probably the most valid one of them all, and I don't discount anything that's from that, because that is one of the biggest things that I always say about our township and about our area too as well. And I tell my kids this. I tell my kids, we live literally in one of the safest places in the world, and I don't want that to change. So I appreciate that comment, because that is one of the things to my core too as well. And I'll speak on behalf of council, because I don't think there's a member on council here that feels any different with that. Is that making sure that we have an absolute safe community is an utmost. And I do not ever want to lie to my kids to say that we live in one of these safest places that we possibly can. We are, like, I mean, there's always going to be threats out there, but I hear you, and that's definitely something that we want to make sure that we're looking at to keep it as safe as possible. Thank you for that comment. All right. We are having, sorry. Oh, sorry, any online too, and somebody run that's and not online. Okay, that's good. We are gonna go to in camera, but we're gonna come back, but we're gonna adjourn from that. Okay, so I have for the committee of the whole, so moved by Councillor Kenny and seconded by Councillor Abbas, that the committee of the whole meeting for June 6, 2023 now be adjourned at 8:39 p.m. All in favor? So I thank everybody that came in. Pass it back over to you so you can go into the in-camera meeting. You want to move or do you want to?
So we're coming back into council. So moved by Deputy Reeve Carroll, seconded by Councillor Crabtree, that council resume the June 6, 2023 meeting at 8:46 PM. All in favor? Carried. So moved by Councillor Crabtree, seconded by Councillor Abbas, that this council moves into closed session at 8:46 PM. As per section 2392 of the Municipal Act, SO 2001, in order to address one item, item 1, bylaw issue concern. 2392, a meeting or part of a meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered is personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, and that the clerk administrator, acting treasurer, and the bylaw enforcement officer remain in the room. All in favor? That's carried.